Hello everyone, this is Fantasy Audiobook. Here you find original fan made audio stories.
Invincible Young Hero, The First Prince of Planet Way. Part 1. USA, Illinois, Chicago. With a loud bang, the satchel containing a time bomb was thrown into the high sky by Omni-Man Nolan, causing no casualties. As Earth's strongest superhero, this maneuver was already as simple as breathing for him. Nolan, when you come back later, help me bring a New Orleans-style roast chicken, the one from that shop. That shop is less than 2 kilometers from home. Are you crippled? Responding to him was the busy tone of beep, beep, beep. Nolan took a deep breath, wiped his face helplessly, and then turned to fly towards the fast food restaurant named Good Taste Chicken. A few minutes later, at the Grayson household. After buying the roast chicken and returning home, Nolan saw Debbie, who had already prepared dinner and was waiting, and Mark, who had just returned from his work-study job at the burger joint and was changing his shoes. And there was also Viltrum Grayson, with black hair and blue eyes, leaning on the sofa playing the PS5. This was the older brother who, for some special reason, was 200 years younger than him. Viltrum Grayson, a transmigrator from the Blue Star. On his way home from work, while scrolling through videos with his Bluetooth headset on, he was directly sent off by an out-of-control 100-ton truck. After being reborn, he became the eldest son of the late emperor of the Viltrumite Empire, Emperor Argyle, and also the half-brother of Nolan. Before the civil war in the royal family truly broke out, the Viltrumite Empress, Martha, sensed something was wrong. To preserve the direct bloodline, she launched 10-year-old Willem in a life pod. She hoped he could start a new life on another planet. Unfortunately, shortly after leaving the home planet, Willem's life pod was captured by a cluster of strange blue light tentacles, which sent him to the Earth of the current timeline. Upon arriving on Earth, Willem's life pod accurately positioned itself in the community where Nolan lived. Coupled with the fact that he was small enough, and there were protective interference devices inside, he was not intercepted by the Global Defense Bureau. It wasn't until he applied for the green card of the Statue of Liberty that Cecil became aware of such a person's existence. And this resulted in Willem, who should have been 20 years older than Nolan, now being about the same age as Nolan's son, Mark. It is unknown whether it was the influence of the blue light that brought him across time and space, or some other reason. Now, Willem, apart from having tougher skin, had not displayed any superpowers. It was also because of Willem's arrival that Nolan finally knew that he was actually the bloodline of the late emperor. But he had stayed on Earth for so long that he had become accustomed to the life of having a wife and children in a warm bed. He only wanted to outlive his wife and children before completing the mission of conquering Earth. As for going back to be an emperor, Nolan had never thought about it before, and he didn't really want to now. He was very clear that he was not good at management, nor did he have the mood to learn how to be a good king. Therefore, Willem just stayed at the Grayson home like that, like a 10-something-year-old Earth kid. After these years of getting along, Mark had also gradually accepted this person who looked about the same as him, but should actually be considered his eldest uncle. After all, Willem, like him, liked various comics and games. The two were not only similar in age, but also had many common topics. However, Willem, who had already been devastated by the exam-oriented education of his previous life, did not want to go to school again, but rather holed up at home playing games. Unlike Nolan, the struggling author, the novels Battle Through the Heavens and A Song of Ice and Fire that Willem plagiarized had become bestsellers that were popular all over the world. Just the money earned from these two books, as well as the subsequent IP adaptation revenue, was enough for the Grayson family to spend. And it was precisely because he was the one who could earn the most money in this family that Willem could peaceably order Nolan around, making him run errands for him. Although he had money, Willem was not happy. After all, a super weapon that cost 400 billion could only make a Viltrum person bleed from the nose. Compared to the superpowers of the Viltrum people, money was worth absolutely nothing. As a direct descendant of the Viltrumite royal family, yet not awakening any superpowers when nearing 18 years old, who could stand that? However, after careful thought, Willem also guessed some of the reasons behind it. It was highly likely that the mysterious blue light that sent him across time and space had sealed his superpowers. However, after trying to no avail a few times, Willem stopped forcing it. If the sky fell, the tall ones would hold it up. Anyway, he possessed a body of steel not inferior to Nolan's, so he didn't need to worry about being blown to death by the aftermath of superpowered beings fighting. Hearing the sound of food being placed on the table, Willem put down the PS5 controller. The tip of his nose quickly caught the scent of roast chicken, and his eyes lit up. Without waiting for Nolan to fully open the food container, he reached out and pinched a piece of chicken leg meat and stuffed it into his mouth. Still this taste, it's authentic. Much better than that burger joint where Mark works. He said vaguely, his eyes full of satisfaction. Debbie smiled and tapped the back of Viltrum's hand. Wash your hands before eating. You're so old, yet you're still like a child. There was no reproach in her tone, but rather full of gentle doting. In the years of living with Viltrum, Debbie had long ago treated this cheap older brother from outer space as one of her own family. Mark had just finished changing his sneakers, and upon hearing this, he leaned over and also pinched a piece of roast chicken. However, there was another kind of irrepressible excitement on his face. His happiness did not come from the delicious dinner. Uncle Viltrum, you absolutely cannot guess what happened to me at the burger joint just now. As he spoke, he pulled out a chair and sat down, resting his hands on the dining table, his eyes sweeping over the three people present with pride. Nolan was slowly pouring himself a glass of beer, and raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. What could happen? Did your boss deduct your wages again? He didn't have much affection for his son's work-study job. Given the Grayson family's current financial situation, especially the continuous income brought by those two novels of Viltrum's, there was absolutely no need for Mark to work so hard, but his son insisted on earning his own pocket money, so he didn't interfere too much. It's not that. Mark waved his hand with a smile, pointing at himself quite complacently. I was throwing out the trash after getting off work. You know, that trash can in the store is especially heavy. A full load of kitchen waste weighs at least a dozen kilograms. I originally wanted to carry it to the recycling point at the street corner, but as soon as I lifted it, my hand exerted force. Hey, guess what? Seeing the three of them staring at him like he was an idiot, Mark shrugged his shoulders somewhat speechlessly. With a bang, that bag of trash flew straight out. Debbie frowned. Flew out. It didn't hit anyone, did it? Hit who? Mark gestured excitedly. It flew straight up, flying higher and higher, and finally became a small black dot, disappearing into the sky. I stared at it for a long time. Even if it didn't fly out of the atmosphere, it definitely went over 100 kilometers away. The dining table instantly fell into silence. Nolan's action of holding the beer glass froze in midair, the nonchalance on his face instantly fading, replaced by unbelievable astonishment, and even carrying a trace of imperceptible gravity. He put down the beer glass, leaned his body slightly forward, and looked at Mark with sharp eyes. Are you sure? Yeah. Mark didn't notice the strangeness in his father's tone and was still enthusiastically adding. I was stunned at the time, and tried to lift other things. That large bucket of tomato sauce, I hooked it with one finger, just like lifting an empty cup. Therefore, I am 100% sure that my superpowers have awakened. Debbie covered her mouth, her eyes full of surprise and worry intertwined. Really? Mark, you didn't get hurt, did you? Is there anything uncomfortable? She reached out to touch her son's arm, fearing that this sudden power would cause him harm. And Viltrum, the moment he heard Mark say, the trash flew out of the atmosphere, his heart skipped a beat. It's here. He knew clearly in his heart that Mark's superpower awakening meant that the plot of Invincible had officially begun. Next, it would be Mark learning to use his superpowers by following Nolan and performing hero missions. Then gradually discovering the truth about the Viltrumite Empire, and the subsequent years of being beaten up. However, what really made his heart race was something else. Just as Mark's words fell, a cold and mechanical electronic voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Detected that the main plot of the world the host is in has officially started. Conqueror system is binding. Binding progress 10%. 50%. 100%. Binding successful. Detected other external force interference on the host, currently clearing. Clearing complete. All restrictions in the host's body have been removed. Viltrum's body instantly stiffened, and he even forgot to chew the roast chicken in his mouth. That's right, brother, now I'm really taking off. Resisting the urge to flip the dining table, Viltrum blinked his eyes and focused his attention. Sure enough, he saw a light blue virtual panel in his mind, floating deep in his consciousness. Host: Viltrum Grayson. Race: Viltrumite Royal, Direct Royal. Age: 17. Strength: 10. Adult Viltrumite is 10. Physique: 11. Adult Viltrumite is 10. Spirit: 11. Adult Viltrumite is 10. Abilities: Super Strength, Super Speed, Body of Steel, Superluminal Jump. The above abilities all originate from the intelligent atoms that make up the Viltrumite body. Viltrum's breathing became slightly rapid. A golden finger. The golden finger of a transmigrator had finally arrived. He had guessed before that his superpowers were sealed by that mysterious blue light, and now the system prompt about external restrictions confirmed this point. And what made him even more excited was that the system could not only help him unlock his superpowers, but also improve his attributes by completing tasks. This meant he didn't have to wait passively like before, but could actively and quickly become stronger. As the eldest son of the late Emperor Argyle, his direct bloodline potential was already limitless. Now with the addition of the system's assistance, let alone Nolan, even surpassing the future Emperor Mark would only be a matter of time. Seeing his father and older brother stunned in place, Mark waved his hand in front of them. So, does this count as my superpowers awakening? Viltrumite and Nolan came back to their senses, coughed awkwardly a few times, and then squeezed out a smile on their faces. Congratulations, Mark. It seems you have indeed awakened your superpowers, the same invincible strength as Nolan. Nolan's face had returned to calm, but his eyes were still deep. He glanced at Viltrumite, then turned to Mark. Oh, right. Let's go for some simple training tomorrow, fly a couple of laps around the area or something. Wow. So I can fly in the future. Can I save the world like Dad? Mark stood up excitedly and jumped on the spot, the floor vibrating slightly from his stomp. Don't get excited, kid. Nolan leaned against the back of his chair and took a sip of his beer to cover up his complex emotions. Superpowers are not for showing off, you have to learn to control them first. I don't want you to tear the house down the moment you get excited. Just like that, the four people with different thoughts tacitly maintained the current happy atmosphere and finished this dinner. After dinner, Viltrumite turned off the PS5, leaving the living room to his foolish little brother and his girlfriend. Everything seemed fine just a moment ago, but when he went back to his room to shower, Viltrumite realized something was wrong. His body, which had previously been that of an ordinary person, had now transformed into a perfect physique, defined and muscular without appearing bulky, possessing the aesthetic beauty and natural proportions of a classical sculpture. This elevated his already reader level, heaven-defying good looks to an even higher level. Now, Viltrumite had automatically mastered a skill. When you like a girl, simply approaching her will guarantee success. Of course, besides his awakened superpowers and vastly enhanced appearance, what Viltrumite cared about even more was his cheat code. System, introduce your functions. This system is the Conqueror system. Its specific functions are as follows. 1. When defeating killing a sentient being, you can plunder and obtain one of their abilities, items, skills, etc. 2. The system storage space can store and retrieve items via thought. It can store living beings, provided they are not stronger than yourself. 3. By ruling, destroying, etc., you can control planets with sentient life to obtain free attribute points to upgrade yourself. Beating people to steal skills, conquering planets to gain attribute points, it was fairly simple and practical. Although he hadn't engaged in actual combat yet, based on his memories from his past life, Viltrumite felt his current strength was likely comparable to those Viltrumite warriors who ganged up on Alan and later invaded the Thraxan planet. As long as he didn't go head-to-head with the top-tier powerhouses in the universe, it wouldn't be a big problem. Anyway, since he was free, why not go for a flight to familiarize himself with his abilities? However, before that, Viltrumite hoped that his first flight in this life could have a bit more ceremonial flair. Opening the basement, Viltrumite once again saw the escape pod that had brought him to this planet. As soon as he touched the fuselage, 2 holographic projections appeared in the basement. Long time no see, my son. You look much more mature than before. This holographic projection was a super-intelligent AI that perfectly simulated Queen Martha of Viltrum, possessing her personality and most of her memories. The other one was the intelligent AI of the late Emperor Argyle, which now only existed as a damaged skull. This program was left in the ship with the intention of providing guidance and companionship to Viltrumite, who had been stranded on another planet. But more importantly, it was to help Viltrumite understand his identity and guide him on how to control his powers. However, because there was already a Viltrumite on the planet where he crashed, this escape pod had been left in the basement gathering dust. Martha's holographic projection smiled and reached out, her fingertips brushing lightly past Viltrumite's cheek as if touching a long-lost treasure. My little Viltrumite, I didn't expect that when we met again, you would have already become a man capable of standing on his own. Her voice carried a hint of choked emotion, and the light flickered with subtle ripples. Even though Viltrumite knew it was fake, in this atmosphere, he couldn't help but feel a little moved. This body, forged like steel, this innate and powerful talent, you have finally awakened the true power belonging to the Viltrum royal family. She raised her hand, and a pale blue stream of energy descended into Viltrum's palm, transforming into a miniature star map mark. This is a gift your mother prepared for you. It can mark sentient planets in the universe that haven't been controlled yet, and it can also provide early warnings of danger. Congratulations, my son. You are no longer a cub in need of protection, but a conqueror about to gallop across the sea of stars. On the other side, Emperor Argyl's projection also spoke in a low voice, exuding a sense of dignity that commanded respect, yet was also gentle and kind. Viltrum, this counts as our first meeting, I suppose. Although we couldn't truly accompany you as you grew up, we have always loved you. I have also prepared a gift for you. It's not anything precious, but I think you will like it. While speaking, something resembling a ring was presented to Viltrum by the holographic projection with one hand. It was a silver-white ring with the classic three-stripe emblem of the Viltrumite Empire in the center. With a gentle press, a Viltrumite battle suit appeared before Viltrum, featuring a red upper body accented with white lines, and gray skirt armor on the lower half. This looked different from the white and gray battle suits of most Viltrumites, appearing closer to the design of Regent Trigon. However, there were slight differences in the details of the lines. But since he was royalty by direct descent, with a lineage even more legitimate than Nolan and his son, wearing this kind of battle suit was perfectly reasonable. After Viltrum finished changing, the two holographic figures looked at each other and spoke together with a smile. Over 90% of life in the universe is more fragile than us Viltrumites. Go conquer them, and let them bathe in the glory of the Empire. Fly, child, the time is now. Accompanied by a spreading shockwave, Viltrum soared into the sky from the basement. His speed easily broke the sound barrier, and in the blink of an eye, he had reached beyond the atmosphere. Viltrum relaxed and spread his arms, letting the sunlight wash over him. Although he couldn't absorb energy from the sun, the feeling still made him feel incredibly relaxed and comfortable. Because he had long since adapted to his steel-like body, Viltrum was not afraid of falling to the ground. This relaxed state of mind actually allowed him to adapt to the feeling of flying by stepping on the air in an instant, as naturally as breathing. Flexing his muscles slightly, accompanied by a sonic boom, Viltrum accelerated a second time in midair. He flew back down below the clouds and began to admire the scenery of Earth from high above. Constantly shifting direction up, down, left, and right, making sharp turns, flying backward while maintaining his posture, and free-falling rapidly while keeping a vertical standing position. In just half an hour, Viltrum had tried out every common flight maneuver he could think of. Right, why not find a superpowered individual to fight and see how the system determines rewards? Thinking this, Viltrum flew toward the city center. In this world, the number of supervillains exceeded that of heroes, so it wasn't difficult to find a few superpowered individuals in conflict. Moreover, he now possessed the power of an adult Viltrumite. As long as he didn't get arrogant and do something suicidal, no one on Earth could really threaten him in a one-on-one fight. Soon, Viltrum found a good target. The high-rise building in front of him was already riddled with holes, with exposed reinforced concrete jutting out of the walls in twisted shapes. A guy with an earthy yellow body covered in spiderweb-like lightning patterns, looking quite bizarre, was raising his hands and continuously releasing snakes of electric current. In midair, a translucent green humanoid creature was constantly dodging and weaving to avoid the guy's attacks. Not far away, a runaway car parked on the side of the road was struck by the current and instantly burst into a raging fire. Heh, Green Ghost, is that all the Global Guard has to offer? Only knowing how to dodge blindly, I see you're nothing special. The translucent green figure nimbly weaving through the gaps in the electric current was none other than Green Ghost of the Global Guard. Her whole body glowed with a lustrous green light, her form sometimes becoming thin as mist, and at other times solid as before. Just now, to save a mother and daughter trapped in a street-side cafe, she had carried them while phasing through a violent web of electric current. At this moment, fine beads of sweat were already seeping from her forehead, and her breathing was somewhat unstable. Live wire, you have caused serious public endangerment. Stop attacking immediately and surrender. Green Ghost's voice carried a hint of exhaustion. She vigilantly dodged the electric attacks while trying to find the opponent's weakness. But Live Wire's electric current coverage was too wide, giving no one a chance to get close. Just then, a red figure dove down from the clouds like a meteor. Boom! The violent impact struck the asphalt road directly beneath Live Wire, instantly shattering the thick pavement and sending spiderweb-like cracks spreading in all directions. The resulting shockwave directly dissipated the nearby electric current into ion streams, and even the few citizens hiding at the street corner were blown back repeatedly. Amidst the swirling dust, Viltrum, dressed in a red, white, and gray battle suit, slowly stood up straight, the three-striped Viltrumite emblem on his chest particularly eye-catching. He brushed some non-existent dust off his shoulder and looked up at Livewire not far away, as if he were just looking at an annoying insect. Livewire was startled by this sudden turn of events, then became enraged with embarrassment. Where did you pop out from, you idiot? Mind your own business, or I'll kill you. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly raised his hand, and several streams of electricity as thick as an arm shot toward Viltrum like venomous snakes, the air filled with the pungent smell of ozone. Green Ghost's pupils constricted, and she instinctively wanted to rush over to rescue him. Look out! But the next second, Green Ghost was stunned. Facing the overwhelming electric current, Viltrum didn't even move his feet, he just raised an eyebrow slightly. Is that it? Viltrum scoffed lightly, and his figure suddenly vanished from where he stood. Before Livewire could react, he felt his neck being tightly gripped by a cold, hard hand. The force was shockingly great, instantly making him unable to breathe, and the electric current around his body became chaotic as a result. What are you? Viltrum couldn't be bothered to waste breath on him and applied a little force with his fingers. Snap! The crisp sound of breaking bones echoed through the chaotic street. Livewire's body stiffened suddenly, his earthy yellow skin quickly lost its luster, the electric current around him dissipated instantly, and he went limp, completely devoid of life. Kill sentient being, 1 plunder available. Immediately after, 3 options popped up. They were 1. Current absorption and release. Can absorb artificial electric current and release it to perform electric attacks. Storage limit changes according to one's physical constitution. 2. Electric shock immunity. Completely immune to damage and numbness effects caused by natural lightning or artificial electric current. After thinking for 2 seconds, Viltrum decided to acquire the opponent's electric shock immunity ability. As for absorbing and releasing electric attacks, regardless of how powerful it might be, the main issue was that it could only absorb artificial electricity, not to mention the storage limit. It was just too pathetic. By comparison, it was more practical to take a resistance. As the choice was confirmed, Viltrum could feel a warm current pass through his body, the plunder was complete. As for the immunity limit of this ability, he would have to wait until he had a chance to test it actively to find out. Everything happened too fast. From Viltrum's appearance to the killing of Livewire, only a few seconds had passed. Green Ghost hovered in midair, staring at everything before her in a daze. Even on her translucent green face, one could see an expression of shock. She had been circling with Livewire for nearly half an hour just now, and despite giving it her all, she could only barely contain him. Yet this mysterious person who suddenly appeared had actually killed this troublesome criminal so easily. And why did this handsome young man look so familiar? Had she seen him somewhere before? Thank you, friend, you. Friend. I am certainly not your friend. Before the words even faded, Viltrum had already ghosted behind Green Ghost, delivering a Viltrum chop to the back of her neck. However, Viltrum did not use his near-godlike, impenetrable chop, he simply used a standard strike aimed at knocking her unconscious. Due to the previous battle, Green Ghost had already exhausted most of her stamina. After Viltrum intervened, the breath she had been holding released, and her spirit relaxed significantly. Now, suddenly attacked by Viltrum at super speed, Green Ghost didn't even have time to use her intangibility ability before being knocked unconscious onto the ground. Her originally translucent green body faded, and Green Ghost transformed into an unconscious black girl. Moreover, apart from a swimsuit-like combat suit, she wore nothing else. Defeated sentient being, available for plunder. 1. Intangibility. Turn the body intangible, and can make objects in contact intangible as well. However, once contact is completely broken, other objects automatically exit the intangible state. 2. Flight. Fly in the air at near sonic speeds. It looked like there were 2 options, but in reality, Viltrum was only interested in Green Ghost's intangibility effect. Without any nonsense, he directly plundered Green Ghost's intangibility effect. From then on, the Global Guard was effectively missing one person. Viltrum did not kill her, intending to see if he could defeat the same person multiple times. This way, he could acquire all the powers from those who possessed multiple superpowers. Therefore, Viltrum now needed to wake Green Ghost up and then knock her unconscious again. However, the result disappointed Viltrum. It seemed he couldn't drain all of a person's abilities by defeating them multiple times. Then, there was one more thing to test. If someone had been defeated and plundered once, could he plunder them a second time by killing them? If it wouldn't work, then in the future, if he encountered a desired ability and the person wasn't on his side, it would be more convenient to just kill them, otherwise, it would take a bit more effort. Where is my power? What did you do to me? We don't even know each other, why would you do this? Green Ghost had already lost her intangibility ability. Now, she was no different from an ordinary person, with absolutely no means of resistance or self-preservation. Viltrum looked at her indifferently, a wicked smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Do I need a reason to kill? Besides, to me, you are not much different from ants. Before Green Ghost could say anything more, Viltrum increased his strength slightly and instantly crushed her entire head. With a casual flick, the red and white filth staining his hands and body was shaken off. Viltrum waited for 2 seconds and finally heard the system notification that pleased him. Killed sentient being, available for plunder. 1. Flight. Fly in the air at near sonic speeds. Although he didn't need it, Viltrum still plundered this ability as well. Viltrum always believed that as long as there wasn't a cap, taking a little more never hurt. What surprised Viltrum even more was that after plundering the last bit of flight ability from Green Ghost, the system gave a new notification. Because the plundered ability already has a superior substitute, the repeated ability has been converted into free attribute points. Current free attribute points. 1. Sure enough, his habit of picking up everything gave Viltrum an unexpected gain. Even if it was just a mosquito leg, it helped him further understand the system's settlement rules. In this way, in the future, as long as conditions allowed, he would try to put in a little more effort. After all, this thing called free attribute points, if not obtained through repeated plunder recycling, could only be acquired by conquering planets. Before he began his journey of conquest, being able to farm more attribute points through this method was never a loss. His first flight, his first real combat, and his first kill after coming to this world. Viltrum now fully understood himself and had truly familiarized himself with how to use his cheat through practical application. Then, it was time to go home. Without any delay, Viltrum shot into the sky, turned and accelerated in the air, and flew toward his bedroom. Because he was extremely fast, from joining the battle to killing Green Ghost and leaving, only about 2 minutes had passed in total. Coupled with the previous battle, the surveillance in this neighborhood had been completely destroyed. Massive amounts of ionizing energy and smoke also interfered with satellite surveillance. Viltrum, who hadn't really covered his tracks, had unexpectedly left no traces behind. It wasn't until the next morning that the people cleaning the streets discovered the dead Green Ghost and live wire. Looking at Green Ghost's headless corpse, Cecil and the other members of the Global Guard were both furious and helpless. In the conference room of the Pentagon, Nolan, Immortal Hero, Red Speed, Battle Girl, Aquarius, Martian Man, and Darkwing gathered together. At this moment, they could only temporarily suppress their anger and confusion, sharing information to preliminarily deduce the murderer's identity. The Pentagon conference room. On the projection screens at both ends of the long conference table, images of Green Ghost's headless corpse and the messy street scene were frozen. Director Cecil sat at the head of the table, holding a thick inspection report between his fingertips, his brows furrowed. Taking a deep breath, his hoarse voice was the first to break the silence. The test results are out. The energy source in Green Ghost's body that supported her intangibility ability is completely depleted. There are no energy residues other than external injuries, nor were any genetic or energy traces of other unknown creatures found. Only the ionizing energy of live wire and the traces of high-frequency shockwaves generated during their battle remain at the scene. Immortal Hero pressed his hands on the table and said in a deep voice. Live wire's ability is primarily high-voltage ionizing attacks. In previous records, he was good at creating explosions and interference through energy overload. Although Green Ghost's intangibility can immunize against physical attacks, it may not always be able to sustain against continuous energy consumption. It is highly probable that while Green Ghost was suppressing live wire, he used his last bit of strength to launch a dying counterattack, and the high-intensity ionizing energy exhausted Green Ghost's intangibility supply. After all, besides Green Ghost, only live wire's corpse was at the scene. This is the most reasonable scenario I can think of. Red Speed tapped his fingertips quickly on the edge of the table, he coughed lightly and took over the conversation. Green Ghost's intangibility ability requires continuous energy consumption, as well as mental control to actively turn it on or off. If live wire deliberately dragged out the time to exhaust her and then suddenly exploded, it is indeed possible for Green Ghost, who was exhausted and dazed, to flip over. Moreover, live wire at the scene was covered in high-voltage electricity, which is clearly the residue of his ability going out of control. This further suggests a dying counterattack. But I always feel something is wrong. I can't put my finger on it, let's call it my intuition. Battle Girl frowned, her fingertips tracing the details of Green Ghost's corpse on the projection screen. The fact that the intangibility energy completely disappeared is very strange. Even if the energy was exhausted, there should be residual basic energy marks. But the inspection report shows that her energy core seems to have been completely drained. Speaking of this, Battle Girl paused, then followed the mainstream speculation to add. Perhaps live wire's ionizing energy properties were special, not only causing physical damage but also completely devouring Green Ghost's ability energy. Although this situation is rare, it is not impossible. I think we can investigate in this direction. Aquarius sat upright on the side, his fish scale skin shimmering under the lights. His voice was relatively lower and carried an accent similar to a lisp. I sensed a large amount of chaotic ionizing energy at the scene, as well as a shielding layer formed by smoke and dust. The satellite surveillance and ground surveillance around the battlefield simultaneously failed, which fits live wire's ability characteristics. I haven't fought that guy, but Red Speed has solved him single-handedly several times before. I feel that the probability of him dying and counter-attacking to take out Green Ghost is not high. Martian Man's green pupils contracted slightly. He raised his hand to press on his brow, his tone carrying a trace of uncertainty. My Martian perception can capture residual emotional fluctuations. There are only anger, fear, and despair, without any third-party aura. If another murderer had intervened, it would be impossible not to leave traces of mental fluctuations. He paused and finally leaned toward the judgment of the majority. It should be live wire's dying counterattack. After all, Green Ghost's intangibility is not as effective against energy attacks as it is against physical attacks. After a long battle, she was low on energy and had her flaw exploited. Darkwing leaned back in his chair, his black cape draping to the floor, and he analyzed calmly. Everyone, I noticed a small detail. There were no dragging marks at the scene, no footprints or energy trajectories of third-party intervention. But Green Ghost's fatal wound was caused by blunt external force. I feel that the possibility of a dying counterattack is not high. After all, you have ignored the most important point. We are the Global Guard, and unless necessary, we will not kill. Since there was no life threat, why would Live Wire fight for his life? Director Cecil listened to everyone's remarks and tapped his fingers heavily on the report. Notify everyone to strengthen the investigation of remaining villains in the city, especially those who have the ability to absorb energy. Secondly, you should also be careful recently, try not to act alone. The heroes in the conference room nodded one after another. The emotion of anger was temporarily suppressed by rational analysis, but everyone's face carried regret and vigilance. None of them thought that this seemingly clear, mutual destruction, was actually a carefully planned murder for power. Even fewer expected that the teenager hiding in the city, who appeared to be just a successful person, was the real murderer. This led to their deduction deviating from the truth from the very beginning. The next day, Nolan and Mark went out to practice controlling their superpowers. Viltrum, on the other hand, stayed at home to research information on various heroes. He needed to filter out those abilities or equipment that could make up for his weaknesses or further enhance his strength. Seemingly out of a desire to protect the heroes, most channels only provided extremely rough information. The slightly more detailed information could only be found on an official spin-off website with voting rankings. It contained some hero codenames and brief records of their deeds. This was of little help to Viltrum. He didn't require detailed ability breakdowns like the dedicated American comic encyclopedias or official guidebooks from his past life. However, with the current information, it was impossible to see anything useful. Viltrum needed a channel that would allow him to get up close and personal with the heroes. Suddenly, he had a good idea. He remembered that before he transmigrated, he used to play a game called Superhero Dispatch Center. Although he knew this world didn't have such an organization, the Global Defense Bureau must have a role with similar functions. He figured he might as well ask Nolan to check with Cecil and see if he could get him in. He only needed to stay for a while to gain access to a massive amount of hero data. Once he filtered and organized this intelligence, his path to becoming stronger would surely become several times smoother. Action followed thought. Viltrum immediately called Nolan and asked him to find time to talk to Cecil about this. Not even Nolan knew that Viltrum had awakened superpowers. He just thought Viltrum was bored at home and wanted some excitement. Nolan assumed it was just a passing fancy and agreed immediately, treating it like humoring a child. That evening, at the Pentagon. Cecil, I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Nolan suddenly appeared and stopped Cecil, who had just finished a meeting, catching him by surprise. Cecil stopped in his tracks, pushed up his glasses, and said in a flat tone, Nolan, is this about Green Ghost? Or are there new leads on a villain? Neither. Nolan shook his head and rubbed his brow, feigning a headache. It's about Viltrum, you know, my brother. He just turned 18 and probably can't sit still lately. He's been clamoring to become a superhero and bothering me at home every day. I've tried to persuade him several times, but he just won't listen. Cecil raised an eyebrow, and the image of the young man he had only seen in files immediately appeared in his mind. He had no formal education and had made a fortune relying on 2 novels. Rumor had it that he stayed at home playing games all day, a typical shut-in. He frowned but still asked carefully, Viltrum. He has no record of any superpowers. Aside from slightly tougher skin, he's no different from an ordinary human. It's too dangerous to let him participate in hero missions. I know. Nolan sighed helplessly, following his lead with a look of distress in his eyes. But the kid is stubborn, he won't turn back until he hits a brick wall. I was thinking, could you arrange a lighter position for him at the Defense Bureau? Something that doesn't require him to be on the front lines. For example, have a squad take him on 2 missions so he can see the cruelty of supervillains with his own eyes. Once he sees that hero work isn't child's play, he'll naturally give up. At this point, Nolan paused and added, don't worry, if he really encounters danger, I will definitely arrive immediately. Besides, he is of Viltrum bloodline, so his physical fitness is much better than an ordinary person's. Even if he encounters danger, he won't be a burden. Just consider it a favor to me, letting him see reality. Cecil remained silent for a moment, his fingers tapping lightly on the file folder as he weighed the pros and cons. The Global Defense Bureau did need to maintain a good relationship with Nolan, and Viltrum's status was special. Although he had not yet awakened any superpowers, he was Nolan's brother, a descendant of the Viltrum people. Keeping him under his nose to observe him was more gentle and safe than installing cameras, and it would also make Nolan owe him a favor. Furthermore, just letting him shadow a squad as an intern, with team members to protect him, meant it was highly unlikely anything major would happen, and it was a way to sell Nolan a favor. Fine. Eventually, Cecil nodded in agreement. Arrange a position for him as a hero squad dispatcher, primarily responsible for coordinating the squad's mission information transfer and organizing target data. He can occasionally follow the squad to the mission site to observe, but he must stay in a safe area. Nolan nodded in satisfaction to thank him and then flew away immediately. Having known Nolan for so many years, Cecil was used to his way of doing things and didn't say much more. The next morning, Viltrum changed into a well-tailored casual suit and arrived at the headquarters of the Global Defense Bureau. He was greeted by a staff member in uniform, who led him to Cecil's office. Cecil looked Viltrum up and down. The young man before him had black hair and blue eyes, with a face that was almost excessively handsome. His designer suit gave him an extraordinary temperament, but his clear eyes and lazy demeanor were inferior even to those of fresh graduates entering society. Viltrum Grayson, welcome to the Global Defense Bureau. Cecil handed him an ID card and patted Viltrum's arm with a smile to show encouragement. Your job is as a hero squad dispatcher, mainly responsible for assisting the squad in handling mission-related data organization, information transfer, and on-site dispatch support. Remember, without my permission, you are not allowed to participate in combat, and you are not allowed to leave the line of sight of the squad members. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, Donald stepped forward and took over the conversation. Come with me, I'll pick a hero squad that's suitable for you. The dispatch center was as bright as day, with dozens of giant screens pieced together into a massive information wall. On it, mission dynamics from around the world, coordinates of hero squads, and mission completion rates were scrolling in real time. In front of the console, dispatchers in uniform were typing rapidly on keyboards. Urgent communication sounds kept coming through their headsets, and the air was filled with an efficient and tense atmosphere. Donald led Viltrum in and gestured for him to look at the leaderboard on the left side of the information wall. This is the overall ranking of all hero squads in the Bureau, scored based on 3 dimensions: mission completion rate, combat damage, and public evaluation. Take a look and see which one you want to join. The top squads, such as the core squad led by Immortal Hero and the Battle Girl squad, are all experienced with top-tier combat power. Following them is the fastest way to get familiar with the work. I personally suggest you join Battle Girl's squad, she is still quite patient. Viltrum followed his gaze. Behind the names of the top squads on the leaderboard, there were high scores of over 90 points, and their mission completion rates were almost 100%. At the very bottom of the leaderboard, a squad named Combat Power Squad was listed. The overall score was only 42, the mission completion rate had just passed 50%, and it was followed by a string of red needs improvement marks. Let's go with this one. Viltrum pointed his finger precisely at the name Combat Power Squad, his tone as flat as if he were ordering takeout. Donald paused, doubting he had heard correctly. What did you say? Combat Power Squad. Viltrum, you're not joking, right? He walked quickly to the console, pulled up the detailed information for this squad, and pushed it to Viltrum. Look at their records. Last month, while handling a bank robbery, they smashed the windows of half the street and let 2 robbers escape. During last week's disaster relief, due to poor coordination among members, they almost caused trapped civilians to be buried again. They are the notoriously bottom-tier squad in the Bureau, with a bunch of problems. Are you sure you want to choose them? Viltrum scanned the member information on the file. Boxing Heroine, the Pioneer, Thor Kid. The 3 names and their corresponding abilities were presented one by one after opening the file. Boxing Heroine had strength and speed near the limit of an ordinary human, the Pioneer was a speedster with several times the speed of sound, Thor Kid possessed a magic hammer with immortal vitality and lightning power. Honestly, apart from that hammer, the others would only give some attribute points even if plundered. However, they could serve as a stepping stone for him to go deep into the Global Defense Bureau and lay a foundation for the future. He maintained his nonchalant appearance on the surface, shrugged, and said, "What's wrong with being at the bottom? The missions of the top squads are too dangerous. If I really encounter a villain who can punch through a tank, I'll have to trouble Nolan to save my life, that would be so embarrassing." Viltrum paused, deliberately showing a lazy, nonchalant attitude. Besides, for a bottom-tier squad, the missions certainly won't be too complicated, which is just right for a newbie like me. If I'm lucky, maybe I can even help them improve their ranking. By then, Director Cecil will have to praise me a couple of times, how much face that would be. Donald looked at his unconcerned expression and sighed inwardly. As expected of a pampered young master, he didn't understand the dangers behind these things at all. But on second thought, the Combat Power Squad did need a reliable dispatcher. The previous ones were either driven away by the poor coordination of the members or resigned after being frightened during missions. Viltrum was Nolan's brother, with a special status. With him suppressing the members, they shouldn't be too presumptuous, and maybe he could really make this squad improve. Fine, I respect your choice. Donald finally nodded and pulled up the base information for the Combat Power Squad. Their exclusive training room happens to be in the West District of Chicago. They should be doing daily training now, I'll take you there. However, I must warn you, the members of this squad have quite unique personalities. Boxing Heroine has a fiery temper, the Pioneer is reckless in her work, and Thor Kid is a bit arrogant. You'll have to be patient. Don't worry, I can handle it. Viltrum patted his chest with a smile, but inwardly he was secretly delighted. Fiery temper, reckless, arrogant, such members were actually easier to control and more convenient for him to secretly investigate other people's information. If it were something like the Teen Team, with a brain like a robot, he would be tied up instead. About 20 minutes later, Viltrum followed Donald to the base of the Combat Power Squad. As soon as the door was pushed open, a burst of violent impact sounds rushed toward them. In the center of the field, the blonde, blue-eyed boxing heroine was punching an alloy sandbag fiercely. Each punch carried a breaking sound, the sandbag was shaken violently, and the metal frame made a creaking sound under the unbearable load. She was wearing a tight-fitting combat suit, her muscle lines smooth and full of strength, sweat sliding down her cheeks, her eyes sharp as knives. Not far away, a blurred brown figure was moving rapidly in the training room, leaving behind trails of afterimages. It was the Pioneer. Her speed was astonishing, and she stirred up gusts of wind wherever she passed. On her way over, she even knocked over a few pieces of equipment nearby, which showed she was indeed a bit reckless. In the corner of the training room, a blond man was carrying an exaggeratedly styled war hammer with one hand. The war hammer was matte silver, with blue gems embedded in the hammerhead, and electricity faintly wandering on the surface. At this moment, this guy was looking at Willem and Donald with disdain, the contempt in his eyes undisguised. Everyone, stop. Donald clapped his hands, attracting the attention of the three. Let me introduce you. This is Willem Grayson. Starting today, he will serve as your squad's dispatcher, responsible for data organization and mission scheduling. The three pairs of eyes fell squarely on Willem, filled with scrutiny and doubt. Boxing heroine stopped her movements, wiped the sweat from her face, and said with a hint of impatience. Dispatcher. Another one. The previous ones were either complaining about our poor mission completion or were scared away crying. How long can this one last? The pioneer appeared in front of Willem instantly, her speed so fast that even Willem couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Several times the speed of sound lived up to its reputation, although it couldn't compare to the superluminal folding and red speed of the Viltrum people, it was already considered top tier among Earth heroes. Aren't you that guy who writes novels? Why do you want to be a dispatcher at the Defense Bureau? Are you here to experience life? Her speaking speed was fast, rattling on like a machine gun. Thor Kid stood up, carried the war hammer over to Willem, and looked down at him. Dispatcher. I advise you to leave early. Our squad doesn't need outsiders pointing fingers. If you have the time, you might as well equip me with more gear that can withstand the power of the war hammer. His tone was full of arrogance, and the gems on the war hammer began to flash with dangerous blue electric light along with Thor Kid's words. Willem still wore that playful smile on his face, not getting angry in the slightest at the questioning and disdain of the three. Don't worry, I'm not here to point fingers, nor am I a rich young master here to experience life. I sincerely want to join the superhero work. As for how long I can last, it depends on the actual results, doesn't it? He looked at Donald and spread his hands. It's clear that my new teammates all have strong personalities. But that's fine, I believe we will cooperate happily. Deputy Director Donald, if there's nothing else, you go ahead and get busy. I'll get to know my teammates. Donald looked at Willem's calm and composed appearance, breathed a sigh of relief, gave a few instructions like, cooperate well, and communicate in time if there are problems, and then turned and left. Only Willem and the three members of the Combat Power Squad remained in the training room, and the atmosphere was a bit awkward for a moment. Willem broke the silence first, walked up to Boxing Heroine, and reached out his hand. Boxing Heroine, right. Your punch speed and strength are amazing. Looking at the rhythm of your hitting the sandbag just now, you must have practiced professional combat techniques. Boxing Heroine was stunned, not expecting this seemingly unreliable rich second-generation kid to be able to see her combat foundation. She hesitated, then shook his hand. I suppose so, I've practiced for over a decade. Truly impressive. Willem praised her sincerely and then turned to the pioneer. Your speed must be the fastest in the world, apart from Red Speed and Omni-Man. The pioneer was a bit embarrassed by the praise and scratched her head. It's okay, it's just that sometimes I can't control it well and tend to bump into things. Finally, he looked at Thor Kid, his gaze falling on the war hammer. You must be the captain of the squad. Please take care of me in the future. The arrogance on Thor Kid's face converged a bit, and he raised his chin slightly. I hope you're not a coward who gets scared away easily. Willem nodded with a smile, while his mind began to analyze the situation of the three. Boxing Heroine's strength and speed were only at the limit of an ordinary human, but her combat techniques were superb. Perhaps he could distill combat mastery type abilities from her. The pioneer's speed of several times the speed of sound, although there were superior alternatives, could be used to convert attribute points. Thor Kid's war hammer was the key. Immortal Vitality and lightning attacks were both extremely valuable abilities, especially the Immortal Vitality, which was almost a life-saving artifact. Alright, everyone continue with your work. Willem put away his thoughts and pointed to a metal table in the corner of the training room. From today on, I will work here. If you have any data that needs to be organized or any missions you want to take, you can tell me. Our goal is very simple. First, raise the ranking, at least stop being at the bottom. What do you think? The three looked at each other, seeing a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. They originally thought Willem was just a playboy here to loaf around, but they didn't expect him to actually plan to do things properly. Boxing Heroine nodded first. Fine, as long as you don't hold us back, we'll cooperate with you. No problem. The pioneer responded immediately. I have no objection either, let's give it a try. Thor Kid shrugged nonchalantly. A faint, imperceptible smile curled up at the corner of Willem's mouth. He knew that the first step of his infiltration into the Global Defense Bureau had been successful. Next, he just needed to work properly for a while, gain their trust, and he would be able to logically access more core information. And these three members of the combat power squad would become the first stepping stones on his path to becoming stronger. Around 8:30 the next morning, Viltrumite arrived at the combat power squad's secret base. Looking at the somewhat deserted hall, he didn't mind much and turned to open the computer, logging into the Global Defense Bureau's internal account. Viltrum Grayson, access granted. Welcome, Agent Grayson. Since there was nothing to do for a while, he set the control area for the day to the large district centered around the base. Viltrumite then minimized the alert notifications, leaned back in his swivel chair, and started watching a show while eating breakfast. Whether it was the scent of pizza or the sound of the fan when the agent's work computer was turned on, it wasn't long before footsteps echoed in the hall. Hey, bro, honestly, our district isn't as chaotic as you'd think. You don't need to be so proactive. Still wearing her pajamas, boxing heroine walked over holding a bottle of Monster Energy, naturally grabbing a slice of pizza to eat. I didn't expect you to like basil smoked chicken pizza too. We have another thing in common. As she spoke, boxing heroine winked at Viltrumite to show friendliness. Truly, stunning looks can invisibly lower the barrier to socialization wherever one goes. The aroma of pizza still lingered in the base hall, and as Viltrumite bit into the last crust while watching his show, a piercing alarm suddenly shattered the morning silence. A frantic commotion immediately came from the direction of the training room, and boxing heroine, who had still been wearing her pajamas, instantly tensed up. The pioneer's figure turned into a blur as she rushed out, and Thorkid also walked into the hall quickly, carrying his warhammer. Although they looked a bit disheveled while hurriedly putting on their combat suits, their sleepy expressions had long since vanished, replaced by serious and cautious looks. It was evident that they actually cared quite a bit, they just hadn't had anyone provide proper guidance, which was why they had caused unnecessary additional damage so many times. The computer screen in front of Viltrumite automatically switched to the Defense Bureau's mission dispatch interface. The attached real-time footage clearly showed the scene at the United Bank 3 kilometers away. The front door had been smashed open by a black pickup truck, glass shards were scattered everywhere, and two robbers wearing black tactical gear and masks were controlling the scene with heavy weapons. Two of them were guarding the entrance with machine guns, while the other two were herding hostages in the hall. Behind the counter, the coerced bank staff could be vaguely seen, and the scene was chaotic. A robbery. Citibank again. This place has been robbed 3 times in the last 6 months. Boxing heroine clicked her tongue and rushed toward the locker room. Last time we handled it, the robbers used a bomb threat. Although we caught them in the end, half the wall collapsed, and we were complained about by the public and had to pay a lot of money in damages. The pioneer jumped in place to warm up her limbs, her speech as fast as a machine gun. The robbers' equipment looks more sophisticated this time, they have machine guns and explosives. There are at least 20 hostages, all gathered in the center of the hall. It won't be easy to just charge in. Thorkid walked to the screen, carrying his warhammer, his eyes filled with disdain. What's so hard about that? I'll smash the door open with one hammer blow, release lightning to stun them all, and it'll be solved in 5 minutes. Listen to me. Viltrumite spoke up suddenly, his fingers typing rapidly on the keyboard as he pulled up the bank's internal structural diagram and the real-time distribution of the robbers. There are gas pipes inside the bank, 3 meters deep in the wall on the left side of the hall. If your lightning attack isn't controlled well, it could very likely ignite the gas. In that case, both the hostages and the robbers would be blown away, and the losses would be even more severe than last time. Besides, the machine gunners at the door have cover, charging indirectly would make you a sitting duck. Thorkid frowned, clearly unconvinced. Then what do you suggest? Just watch them hold the hostages. Follow my lead. Viltrumite's tone was calm but carried an unquestionable power. The structural diagram on the screen was instantly marked with several red and blue dots. Boxing heroine, you infiltrate through the ventilation duct at the back door on the outside of the bank. The grill there is made of aluminum alloy. With your strength, you can easily pry it open. After infiltrating, hide behind the screen in the VIP room and wait for my instructions. The 2 robbers behind the counter only have pistols, no heavy weapons, your martial arts skills are enough to handle them. Remember to try not to damage the internal facilities, just use grappling techniques to control them. Boxing heroine had just finished changing into her combat suit and ran out. She was stunned for a moment upon hearing the instructions. The ventilation duct. Isn't that too roundabout? Wouldn't it be faster to just charge in through the back door? The back door has been blocked by them with debris, and it's covered by surveillance. Charging in would alert them. Viltrum pulled up the real-time footage of the back door, and sure enough, piles of tables, chairs, and wooden crates could be seen. The ventilation duct leads directly above the hall. It's the best infiltration route. Your size is just right to pass through, and I believe in your explosive power. Boxing heroine looked at the clear markings on the screen and nodded. Fine, I'll listen to you. The pioneer. Viltrum turned to the brown figure and gave the corresponding plan. Your speed is key. You first circle around to the alley on the side of the bank. The moment boxing heroine makes her move, sprint to the entrance at top speed and use your concussion grenades to distract the two machine gunners. You don't need to try to injure or knock them out, just make them temporarily deaf and blind. Then immediately turn back and block the bank's side and back doors to prevent anyone from escaping. Remember, your mission is containment and blockade, not a head-on clash. Don't rush recklessly just because you're fast, and avoid hitting the hostages. The pioneer grinned, her eyes flashing with a bit of anticipation. Containment and blockade. I'll do my best. Finally, Viltrum's gaze fell on Thor Kid. Thor, you are responsible for attracting attention from the front, but you absolutely must not use large-scale lightning attacks, nor can you smash the building with your warhammer. Just stand 50 meters away from the bank's front entrance and strike the ground with your warhammer to create vibrations and noise, making the robbers think we're going to launch a frontal assault, thereby distracting them. Wait until boxing heroine subdues the robbers behind the counter and the machine gunners at the door are distracted by the pioneer, then you charge in and knock them out with your warhammer. Keep your strength within 30%, that's enough to subdue them without causing fatal injuries or facility damage. 30% strength. Thor Kid looked reluctant, muttering under his breath. Either follow orders, or you stay at the base for this mission. Viltrum's tone turned cold, his eyes looking at him sharply. If you dare to use lightning or destroy the building on your own, resulting in hostage injuries, you'll bear the consequences yourself. You should know the Defense Bureau's discipline better than I do. If another major error occurs, your squad might be disbanded. Thor Kid's face stiffened. Although he was arrogant, he knew what the squad being disbanded meant, so he could only hum unhappily. Fine, I'll listen to you. Nice, that's better. Viltrum nodded and pressed the communication connection key on the keyboard. I will give you instructions in real time through the headsets. I have hacked into the bank's internal surveillance. I can see your positions and the robbers' movements. Now, mission start. As soon as he finished speaking, the three immediately acted according to the plan. Boxing heroine rushed out of the base, disappearing at the end of the street in a few leaps. The pioneer turned into a blur and instantly darted into the alley. Thor Kid carried his warhammer, got on his motorcycle used for transport, and headed toward the bank's front entrance. Viltrum leaned back in his swivel chair, his eyes fixed on the multiple surveillance screens, with real-time feedback from the three coming through his headset. Boxing heroine, you are 50 meters from the ventilation duct, be careful to avoid the roadside surveillance. The pioneer, there are two homeless people in the alley, go around them, don't expose your position. Thor, slow down, keep a 50-meter distance, start striking the ground now, with moderate force. Following the instructions, Thor Kid raised his warhammer and lightly struck the ground. With a muffled thud, the ground vibrated slightly. The robbers in the bank hall were clearly panicked for a moment. The machine gunner at the door immediately turned his gun toward the outside, staring vigilantly at the distant Thor Kid. People inside, listen up. Drop your weapons and release the hostages, or we will launch a forced assault. Thor Kid shouted loudly on purpose, his voice booming and carrying through the bank's glass door. The robbers in the lobby were indeed distracted. One of the robbers, who had been watching the hostages, turned to look at the door, cursing into his walkie-talkie. Now, boxing heroine, move. Viltrum issued the order immediately. On the screen, boxing heroine had already reached the back of the bank. She gripped the grill of the ventilation duct with both hands and exerted force with her arms. With a crack, she snapped the aluminum alloy grill and nimbly climbed inside. The ventilation duct was narrow, but her movements were completely unaffected, and she soon reached the vent above the lobby. She lay prone at the vent, observing the situation below through the gaps. Two robbers were standing with their backs to her, urging the staff to pack the money while pointing their handguns at the staff's heads. Your field of view is partial right now. The robber on the left is 3 meters away from you, and the one on the right is 1.5 meters away. Take down the one on the right first. Viltrum's voice rang out in her earpiece. Boxing heroine took a deep breath, kicked the vent grill open with a sudden force, and pounced down like a leopard. The robber on the right didn't even have time to react before she kicked him in the back of the knee, causing his legs to give way and forcing him to his knees. Boxing heroine followed through, pressing her left hand on his shoulder and locking his chin with her right hand, twisting it to the right. The robber instantly lost consciousness. The robber on the left heard the commotion and turned, but just as he was about to raise his handgun, boxing heroine delivered a side kick, sending the gun flying from his hand. She immediately closed the distance, slamming her elbow into the robber's chest. The robber groaned, collapsed to the ground, twitched a few times, and then went still. The entire process took less than 10 seconds, it was clean, efficient, and caused no damage to the facilities. Well done. Viltrum praised, immediately issuing the next order. The Pioneer, disrupt the machine gunners at the door. The Pioneer, who had been waiting in the alley, instantly turned into a red blur, rushing out of the alley and arriving at the side of the bank's main entrance. She pulled a concussion grenade from her waist, pulled the pin, and threw it precisely onto the ground in front of the two machine gunners. The grenade exploded the moment it hit the ground. There was no flash of fire, only a piercing high-frequency sound wave and a blinding white light. The two machine gunners immediately covered their faces and screamed, their ears bleeding and their eyes temporarily blinded, as their machine guns clattered to the ground. Thor Kid, now. Rush in and knock them out. Thor Kid had been ready and waiting. Upon hearing the order, he immediately strode inside. He stepped over the machine guns on the floor, raised his warhammer, and tapped the handles against the backs of the two machine gunners' heads. The two groaned and collapsed to the ground, knocked unconscious. The hostages in the lobby cheered upon seeing the robbers neutralized, but they were quickly calmed down by boxing heroine. Everyone, don't panic. Stay crouched where you are and don't move. We will ensure your safety. There's one more robber under the counter. Viltrum suddenly spotted a corner on the surveillance monitor where a robber had taken advantage of the chaos to hide under the counter, clutching a bomb detonator in his hand. Boxing heroine, there's a robber under the left side of the counter with a bomb detonator. Handle this carefully. Boxing heroine immediately became alert and walked slowly toward the left side of the counter. She could hear the sound of rapid breathing coming from underneath. Come out. Your accomplices have all been neutralized. Resistance is futile, she said in a low voice. The robber under the counter suddenly shouted excitedly. Don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll detonate the bomb. This whole bank is rigged with explosives. Viltrum immediately pulled up the bank's structural blueprints and previous security inspection records. After a quick scan, he said. The explosives are on the perimeter, even if he detonates them, the damage won't be significant. You can pretend to retreat and neutralize him when he lets his guard down. Boxing heroine followed Viltrum's advice and slowly retreated 2 steps. Fine, I won't come over. Don't do anything rash. The robber under the counter indeed lowered his guard and secretly poked half his head out to observe the situation. At that moment, boxing heroine lunged forward, delivering a flying elbow strike that knocked the robber unconscious instantly. With a forceful tug, she dragged him out from under the counter and pinned him with her knee on his chest. She then quickly snatched the detonator from his hand and tossed it aside on the floor. The detonator hit the ground without causing any explosion, it was clearly a fake. Mission accomplished. All robbers neutralized, 0 injuries to hostages. Boxing heroine said into her earpiece, her tone carrying a trace of imperceptible excitement. Viltrum looked at the image on the screen and nodded with satisfaction. Very good. The police will take over now. You all can withdraw and rest. The police had arrived at the scene earlier. Seeing that the robbers had been dealt with, they rushed in to take charge of the neutralized robbers and the hostages. Reporters also arrived on the scene, taking photos and interviewing the trio. The scene was bustling with activity. Meanwhile, back at the base, Viltrum looked at the mission evaluation report popping up on his computer screen, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Mission completion rate, 100%, 0 hostage casualties, all robbers captured. Public facility damage, only the main entrance glass and the rear ventilation duct grill. The financial loss is less than $1,000, far below the average loss of past missions. Public feedback, 5-star rating. Many hostages praised the heroes for their swift action and proper protection during interviews. Combat Power Squad mission evaluation, 85 points, excellent. Overall ranking improved to 32nd place. Needs improvement, tag removed. The Defense Bureau system notification popped up, and the excited cheers of the 3 could be heard in the earpiece. We actually got an excellent rating. The Pioneer's voice was full of surprise. This is the first time our squad has received an excellent rating since we were formed. And with such minimal damage, we won't have to worry about complaints anymore. Boxing heroine's tone could not hide her excitement. Although Thor Kid didn't say anything, one could tell he was laughing along, clearly very satisfied with the result. Half an hour later, the three returned to the base, their faces beaming with irrepressible smiles. The pioneer, holding a cup of coffee she had just bought, rushed up to Viltrum and handed it to him. However, due to too much momentum, the coffee splashed all over Viltrum. Fortunately, it was an iced Americano, otherwise, it would have been a disaster. Sorry, I was too excited, ha ha ha. Boxing heroine wasn't as exaggerated, but she smiled and bowed to him. Viltrum, thanks. We owe this to you, otherwise, we definitely would have messed it up again. Thor Kid, carrying his warhammer, walked up to Viltrum. He uncharacteristically set aside his arrogant attitude, his tone much more sincere. I underestimated you before. You really do have skills. From now on, our squad will follow your command. Viltrum took the coffee, took a sip, and still wore that cynical smile on his face. It's nothing, I just used my brain a little. Your combat effectiveness was already very high, you just didn't coordinate well or use the right methods before. As long as you play to your respective strengths and cover each other's weaknesses, your squad is actually very powerful. He paused, deliberately revealing a lazy expression. But having said that, does getting an excellent rating come with a bonus? I heard that the Defense Bureau's bonuses for excellent missions are quite generous, just enough for us to replace some training equipment. Or, treat me to a good meal. No problem. Boxing heroine agreed immediately. Dinner is on me tonight. We're going to the best steakhouse in the city center. I have no objections. The pioneer raised both hands in agreement. Thor Kid also nodded, an excited expression on his face. Sounds good. This is a memorable first excellent rating, after all. Watching the three of them so excited, Viltrum sneered inwardly. These so-called heroes were indeed easily satisfied. But this was good, gaining their trust would make it easier to access the core data of the Defense Bureau in the future. On the surface, he smiled and said, in that case, I won't be shy. By the way, the Defense Bureau system just sent a new list of missions. There are a few small tasks that aren't very difficult. We can take them on and, while we're in good form, boost our ranking even further. Great. We're with you. The three said in unison, their eyes filled with motivation. In the following days, Viltrum became increasingly familiar with the three members of the Combat Power Squad. Outside of work, he also gathered detailed information on quite a few heroes. Combining these materials, Viltrum screened and selected a number of heroes. He arranged these people according to a certain priority and designed a hunting list for himself. First, one must understand what one lacks. Using the cheater Superman next door as a comparison, the abilities he currently urgently needs are ranged attack methods, resistance to sonic waves, resistance to magic, illusion, mind control abilities, internal organs with defense comparable to his skin, and resistance to viruses, toxins. Viltrum is someone who prefers to play it safe, so when designing the hunting list, those he placed at the forefront were all people capable of eliminating his own weaknesses. Among them, the one placed first was a sonic-type ability user. Code name: Nighthawk, whose ability is similar to the ultrasonic waves of the X-Men next door, or those in the DC universe. They all release powerful sonic shocks through actions like shouting. Its power is even enough to support the user in flying long distances at speeds approaching commercial aircraft. The main reason she uses this code name is that the sound emitted when using her ability is almost identical to the call of the well-known avian vocal artist, the red-tailed hawk. If he plundered her, he could obtain sonic resistance, or even immunity. Secondly, there is internal defense. Viltrum certainly doesn't want to die from being blown up by pop rocks. As long as he can completely immunize against the three weaknesses of sonic waves, viruses, and internal destruction, then he will be truly invincible. Before that, Viltrum does not plan to show his hand and take over Earth just yet. Viltrum now also has a relatively complete plan. Nighthawk is someone he must kill. Because in addition to a physique capable of resisting sonic waves, sonic attacks are also a very worthy ability to plunder. Furthermore, if her powers disappeared after being defeated, it would definitely arouse suspicion. Killing the opponent could save a lot of trouble. As for internal defense and resistance to viruses and toxins, Viltrum also has a clear target, and that is Adam Eve. The atomic control ability he would plunder would not have the invisible restriction of, cannot be used on living organisms except in extreme cases. Viltrum could to a certain extent change the arrangement of his own intelligent atoms, allowing his internal body to possess defense not inferior to, or even stronger than, his skin. By then, he would become a Viltrumite who is immune to the sonic weakness, has an interior tougher than his exterior, and can even become intangible. By that time, ruling Earth will be much easier and more efficient, with no need for large-scale destruction like in the comics. I don't know why, but the male heroes in this world are basically stat-based, while the gimmick-heavy characters are mostly women. And those who can compensate for the shortcomings of Viltrumites are all female heroes. Let's go meet that Nighthawk tonight. The sonic weakness is truly a natural nemesis for Viltrumites and must be removed as soon as possible. That night, Mexico City. Night fell like a thick black velvet cloth covering Mexico City, the prosperity of the city center forming a stark contrast to the chaos of the outlying districts. Dressed in his red, white, and gray Viltrumite suit, Viltrum quietly arrived in this crime-ridden city. He locked onto Nighthawk's range of activity based on Internal Defense Bureau intelligence. In this slum controlled by drug traffickers, gunfire, death, and contraband are the norm at night. Just as he passed through an alley piled with trash, a deafening sonic wave swept over, accompanied by the shaking of buildings and the crisp sound of shattering glass. Viltrum's eyes narrowed, and a cold sneer curled the corner of his mouth. He exerted force with his feet, his figure instantly turning into a blur as he sped toward the source of the sonic wave. The battlefield was in an abandoned factory area, where dozens of armed drug traffickers were putting up a desperate resistance, relying on the steel framework of the factory buildings. Most of them held revolvers or Glock pistols, with two of them having heavier firepower, carrying Thompson submachine guns. In the center of the factory, a black figure was rampaging like a god of war. It was none other than the target of Viltrum's trip, Nighthawk. Her suit was indeed as described in the files, a black bodysuit outlining her agile frame. An Indian-style wrestling mask covered most of her face, revealing only a sharp jawline and a pair of keen eyes. The black cape on her back was inlaid with scarlet feather-like patterns, flapping loudly in the battle like spread wings. At this moment, she was fighting two drug traffickers hand-to-hand, her movements combining the precision and sharpness of military combat with the flamboyance of wrestling techniques. A beautiful lariat slammed a drug trafficker hard onto the concrete floor, instantly knocking him out of the fight. Drop your weapons, or I can't guarantee your safety. Nighthawk's voice was clear and bright, carrying a piercing quality that made Viltrum's eardrums ache slightly. Seeing that the drug traffickers were still resisting, she took a sharp breath, and a shrill cry emanated from beneath her mask. The sound was identical to the call of a red-tailed hawk, yet it contained violent energy. The sonic wave, like an invisible heavy hammer, spread instantly. Several drug traffickers near her were directly shaken until they bled from their 7 orifices, collapsing to the ground and convulsing uncontrollably. The machine gunner in the distance also had his eardrums in excruciating pain, his submachine gun firing wildly out of control, bullets sparking against the steel structure of the factory. The surrounding glass windows shattered completely, the walls developed spiderweb-like cracks, and even the ground was trembling slightly. Viltrum was hidden in the shadows outside the factory, observing all this with a solemn gaze. The power of this sonic wave far exceeded his expectations. If hit head-on, he would likely lose his ability to resist instantly, forced to curl up on the ground while holding his head. Putting everything else aside, even without the system's plunder function, Viltrum would absolutely have to kill such an ability user. Although Nighthawk's sonic attack was powerful, the consumption was not small either. After unleashing this strike, she clearly paused for a moment, and her breathing became somewhat rapid. The drug traffickers seized this gap and immediately launched a counterattack. The combined firepower of pistols and submachine guns pressed in again, bullets pouring toward Nighthawk like raindrops. Facing the dense hail of bullets, Nighthawk showed no fear. She nimbly weaved and dodged among the factory's steel frames, occasionally raising her hands to block. Her body was indeed tough. Several stray bullets hit her shoulder and back but failed to penetrate her suit to cause any substantial damage. But there were too many drug traffickers, and the firepower was too fierce. She was soon forced into a corner of the factory, her situation becoming increasingly difficult. It seems it's time for a damsel in distress rescue. Viltrum chuckled, his figure suddenly disappearing from where he stood. The next second, he appeared in the center of the factory, landing right between Nighthawk and the drug traffickers. The drug traffickers, bullets instantly shifted targets, firing densely toward Viltrum. But these ordinary bullets were nothing more than an itch to the steel body of a Viltrumite. Bullets struck his suit and were deflected one after another, unable to even leave a white mark. Who the hell are you? The drug trafficker leader saw this, shocked and furious, roaring an order. Increase firepower. Kill him. Nighthawk was also stunned. She looked at the mysterious person who had suddenly appeared before her. The other person's suit had a unique style, the red, white, and gray color scheme full of a sense of power, and the three-stripe logo on his chest made her inexplicably feel a hint of pressure. What shocked her even more was that the other person could directly withstand submachine gun bullets. This level of defense was likely not inferior to Omni-Man. Viltrum turned around and gave Nighthawk a meaningful smile. Seeing you struggle to deal with so many scumbags on your own, why don't I give you a hand? Before he finished speaking, he exerted sudden force with his feet, his figure charging toward the nearest heavy machine gun like a cannonball. The two drug traffickers operating the machine gun hadn't even reacted before they were grabbed by the collars, one in each of Viltrum's hands. He applied a little force with his arms, and the men flew out like kites with broken strings, slamming heavily against the factory wall. These people exploded like water balloons, turning into radial bloodstains on the ceiling. After taking care of the heavy machine gun, Viltrum was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, moving wantonly among the drug traffickers. His movements were not flashy, but precise and efficient. Every punch and every kick knocked down a drug trafficker. The super strength of a Viltrumite was displayed vividly in his hands. The drug traffickers had no power to resist before him, only able to let out desperate screams. Nighthawk came back to her senses, a flash of gratitude in her eyes. She knew she had encountered a powerful reinforcement, so she immediately regained her spirit and launched another attack. Her combat skills and wrestling techniques were extremely refined, forming a perfect coordination with Viltrum, one on the left and one on the right. Nighthawk first used a side kick to send a drug trafficker toward Viltrum, who then took the opportunity to land a punch and knock the opponent out. Subsequently, she used Viltrum's cover to rush to the drug trafficker leader, using a beautiful scissors move to subdue him with a flying cross armbar. Kill them all, or? Viltrum asked Nighthawk while dealing with the last few drug traffickers, his tone as flat as if he were asking about the weather. Nighthawk paused, then shook her head. Just leave them to the police. We are heroes, not executioners. Although her fighting style was fierce, she always adhered to the bottom line of a hero. Viltrum raised an eyebrow and didn't say much, simply raising his hand to chop the back of the last drug trafficker's neck, knocking him out. He hadn't intended to take action directly here anyway. The act of cooperation hadn't finished playing out, so naturally, he had to satisfy the other party's heroic code first. In just a few minutes, the two had subdued all several dozen armed drug traffickers, who now lay scattered on the ground. The factory was in shambles, the smell of gunpowder mixed with the stench of blood, making it nauseating. Nighthawk walked up to Viltrum, removed the Native American-style mask from her face, revealing a delicate, sculpted face. Her skin was a healthy wheat color, her eyes bright and sharp, and her lips curled into a smile of approval. Thank you, mysterious hero. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I would have had a lot of trouble today. Just a small favor. Viltrum maintained his cynical smile, but his eyes were secretly observing her closely. My code name is Nighthawk. What about you? Nighthawk offered her hand, wanting to befriend him. In her eyes, the mysterious person before her was powerful and had a sense of justice, making him an ally worth knowing. You can call me Viltrum. I haven't thought of a codename yet. Viltrum did not reach out, only nodding slightly. He did not want to have too much physical contact with the other party to avoid exposing his true identity. After all, he was still a handler for the Global Defense Bureau. Nighthawk didn't mind, retracted her hand, and smiled. Viltrum. That's a nice name. You're very strong. Which hero team are you from? I don't think I've seen you in the Defense Bureau's files before. I'm not a member of any team. I just step in to help occasionally. Viltrum brushed her off casually, while calculating how to deal with this person. Just then, sirens sounded in the distance. Someone had clearly called the police. Usually at this point, Nighthawk, as a dark vigilante, would exit and leave the scene to the police. She put her wrestling mask back on and jumped to the factory window, preparing to leave. Wait! Viltrum suddenly called out to her. Nighthawk stopped and turned around in confusion. What is it? Viltrum looked at her, his eyes gradually becoming sharp, and the smile on his lips took on a hint of coldness. I did you such a big favor, shouldn't you repay me? A hint of vigilance rose in Nighthawk's heart. She could feel Viltrum's aura changing. The friendliness from just a moment ago vanished, replaced by a strong sense of oppression, as if she were being stared at by a wild beast. What kind of repayment do you want? She clenched her fists, her muscles tensed, ready to fight at any moment. I want your ability. Viltrum's voice was cold and direct, without the slightest concealment. Before the words even faded, his figure had already vanished from where he stood. Nighthawk's pupils constricted, and relying on years of combat instinct, she lunged to the side to dodge. Good reaction, but not fast enough. Viltrum's voice sounded in Nighthawk's ear, carrying a hint of mockery. Nighthawk was shocked and immediately tried to turn and counterattack, but felt a numbness in the back of her neck as a powerful force surged, pinning her down tightly. Her sonic attacks required charging and breathing coordination. Being controlled at close range like this, she couldn't unleash them at all. She struggled desperately, trying to use wrestling techniques to break free, but Viltrum's strength was simply too overwhelming. He locked her in place like iron pliers, leaving her unable to move. Who exactly are you? What are you planning? Nighthawk was shocked and furious, her voice tinged with despair. She could feel herself growing weaker from lack of oxygen, and the fear of death gradually welled up. Viltrum didn't answer her question, merely maintaining the chokehold until Nighthawk passed out. Defeat a sentient being to perform a plunder. The system prompt rang in his mind, and two options were clearly presented. 1. Sonic control, can release powerful sonic attacks and use sound waves to achieve high-speed flight. 2. Sonic resistance, immune to the effects of sonic attacks. 3. Bulletproof body, the body is tough and strong, capable of resisting low-caliber pistol bullets. He didn't kill her immediately, choosing sonic resistance first. A warm current instantly spread throughout his body, and he could feel subtle changes in his auditory system and internal organs. The instinctive fear of sound waves he had felt before now vanished completely. Viltrum couldn't help but punch the air in excitement. From now on, he would no longer fear the sonic attacks that were lethally dangerous to the Viltrum people. A few seconds later, in an abandoned factory several kilometers away, Nighthawk was awakened by Viltrum. Based on previous tests, he had to let the target of the plunder regain consciousness and then kill them again to trigger the plunder. We were just fighting side by side, why? Villains die from talking too much. Viltrum didn't utter a single wasted word, directly snapping Nighthawk's neck to kill her. Kill a sentient being to perform a plunder. 1. Sonic control, can release powerful sonic attacks and use sound waves to achieve high-speed flight. 2. Bulletproof body, the body is tough and strong, capable of resisting low-caliber pistol bullets. This time, Viltrum followed his original plan and plundered Nighthawk's sonic control ability. With this, he not only possessed sonic immunity but could also use the powerful sonic waves Nighthawk had used to suppress other Viltrum people. A few minutes later, the police arrived at the scene and were stunned to see the drug traffickers lying dead in pieces and Nighthawk's corpse with her neck twisted. They immediately cordoned off the scene and notified the Global Defense Bureau. Meanwhile, Viltrum had already flown outside of Mexico and was familiarizing himself with his newly acquired sonic control ability high in the sky. He took a deep breath and, imitating Nighthawk's method, let out a low cry. The sound waves spread out, forming a powerful thrust that increased his flight speed significantly. Besides that, he could also form precise attacks by adjusting the frequency of the sound waves. In addition to wide-area conical sonic coverage, he could also focus them into a line or a single point for cutting and penetration. Not a bad ability. Viltrum was secretly pleased. The sonic attacks not only made up for his weakness in long-range combat, but also further increased his flight speed. It was killing two birds with one stone. And the acquisition of sonic resistance allowed him to completely rid himself of a major weakness of the Viltrum people. Viltrum let out a long sigh of relief, adjusted his direction, and returned toward Chicago with satisfaction. On the other side, the Global Defense Bureau's investigation into the death of Nighthawk had only just begun. They probably wouldn't have guessed that the handler hiding in their midst, who had been helping the bottom-tier team make significant progress, was the true culprit behind this series of murders. After hunting down Nighthawk and gaining the abilities of sonic immunity and releasing powerful sonic waves, Viltrum was not in a hurry to continue his crimes, instead continuing his work as a dispatcher as if nothing had happened. Thanks to his guidance during this period, the Combat Power Squad's rating had improved from being at the bottom to 9th place. Even Cecil personally praised the team members and upgraded the authority level of the Combat Power Squad. Honestly, I had some prejudices against you at the beginning. But I didn't expect you to do better than many veterans. In just about a month, you've raised the Combat Power Squad from the bottom to its current level. I have no doubt that with a few more years of settling in, you can take my place. Vilum responded with a smile on his face, but sneered in his heart, "Old thing, don't get cocky. Once I get Eve's atomic control ability, the Earth will belong to me." The next evening, the opportunity finally came. Eve was carrying a small white bag, walking slowly along an alley. With her dazzling orange-red long hair draped casually over her shoulders, as a classmate of Mark's, she was an ordinary high school student during the day. At night, she transformed into Atom Eve, using her atomic control ability to protect the city's peace along with her friends from the teen team. After school today, she helped a pair of lost twins find their parents in a park near the school. She also used atomic restructuring to create a temporary shield, blocking a rock that fell from a construction building, preventing an accident. These trivial matters had long since become routine for her. Atomic control allowed her to easily restructure atoms in the air, create shields, hover and fly, or repair items. However, even she had forgotten that her ability could actually be applied to living organisms. It was just sealed by her biological father. The sides of the alley were old residential buildings with mottled walls, and occasionally a few dog barks could be heard, making it exceptionally quiet. Eve hummed a tune, her steps light, completely unaware that a dangerous shadow had already locked onto her. Vilum was hiding on the roof at the end of the alley, coldly staring at his hunting target. He had been tracking Eve for a whole day through the Defense Bureau's internal positioning system. As a dispatcher, he had the authority to access the real-time location and mission records of all heroes, which made it easy for him to find an opportunity when Eve was alone. Vilum's eyes were cold and sharp, and all the information about Eve's abilities echoed in his mind. Usually, she could only create shields and fly, appearing harmless, but in a near-death state, the restrictions would be lifted, her combat power would surpass a Viltrumite, and she could be resurrected at full status. What a troublesome ability. It must be a fatal blow, as there must be no chance for her to trigger the mechanism. He knew very well that with Eve's ability, if they fought head-on, she would most likely create layers of atomic shields at the first moment. Although it might not block his attack, it would be quite troublesome if it dragged on. Therefore, he chose a sneak attack, and it was the most extreme and ruthless sneak attack. Eve walked to the middle of the alley, stopped, took a bottle of mineral water from her bag, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip. Just as she tilted her head back, Vilum moved. Without any warning, he pushed his super speed to the limit, his figure turning into an afterimage that could not be captured by the naked eye. He instantly crossed a distance of over 100 meters and appeared behind Eve. He didn't use any extra moves, the sound hadn't even reached Eve's ears yet. His right hand was in the shape of a hand blade, carrying the purest power of a Viltrumite, and he slashed fiercely at the top of Eve's head. The crisp sound of bone shattering was piercing in the quiet alley. Eve's body was split in half vertically, the mineral water bottle in her hand fell to the ground, and water spilled everywhere. She didn't even have time to react before her brain lost all consciousness because the nerve center was instantly shredded. However, Vilum didn't stop there. Instead, he used several more hand blades to chop the already split in half Eve into pieces. He knew very well that just the damage from the first strike probably wouldn't completely kill Eve, who possessed the atomic control ability. If the near-death protection mechanism was triggered, things wouldn't be that simple. Only then did blood, mixed with organ fragments, spray out from the scattered remains, staining the ground and Vilum's suit red. Pink fragments and orange-red hair were mixed in the pool of blood. The scene was unbearable to look at. Vilum shook his hand expressionlessly, looking at the unrecognizable corpse pieces on the ground, confirming that Eve had no possibility of resurrection, and only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Kill a sentient being, can proceed to plunder. The cold system prompt sounded in his mind, and two options were clearly presented. 1. Atomic control. Can control atoms within a certain range, create shields, fly, repair items, etc. Simultaneously, can restructure for resurrection. When near death, automatically restructures one's own atoms to recover to peak state. A warm and strange energy surged into his body, merging with his Viltrumite smart atoms. Vilum could clearly feel that he had established a wonderful connection with the atoms in the surrounding environment, the oxygen atoms, carbon atoms, hydrogen atoms in the air. Their flow, distribution, and even vibration frequency were clearly presented in his consciousness. He raised his hand, and with a thought, the surrounding carbon and oxygen atoms quickly gathered and restructured, forming a transparent shield in his palm. The texture was harder and denser than the one Eve created, faintly glowing with a metallic luster. This was exactly what he wanted, to strengthen his own defense through atomic control, especially his internal defense. He tried to mobilize the smart atoms in his body and use the atomic control ability to adjust their arrangement. The smart atoms originally concentrated on the body surface began to spread and restructure toward the internal organs, bones, and other parts, forming an invisible atomic protective layer. Now, not only was his body surface indestructible, but his internal organs also possessed defensive power not inferior to his body surface, and he no longer had to worry about being injured from the inside by things like small bombs. He tried to apply the atomic control ability to his arm. With a thought, the atomic density of his arm began to change, becoming harder while maintaining flexibility. He also tried to adjust the vibration frequency of the atoms. His arm instantly became scorching hot, and he could even feel the surrounding air being distorted by the high temperature. No restrictions, absolutely no restrictions. Viltrumite was ecstatic in his heart. Now, because he didn't have the restriction of cannot apply atomic control to living organisms. He could also change the atomic structure of viruses, bacteria, or other toxic substances and neutralize them directly. In a way, the Scourge virus researched by that traitor in the Planetary Alliance would also be completely turned into trash. He glanced down at the corpse pieces on the ground without any nostalgia. Viltrumite flashed, operated his super speed again, and disappeared at the end of the alley. He didn't go straight home but flew to a forest on the outskirts of Chicago to further familiarize himself with his newly acquired atomic control ability. With a thought, the atoms of the surrounding trees began to restructure, the trunks twisted and deformed, finally forming a metal statue as tall as him. He raised his hand to the sky, and the water molecules in the air quickly gathered and restructured, forming a crystal-clear ice arrow. As he waved his hand, the ice arrow shot into the distance, penetrating several large trees with astonishing power. By rearranging the smart atoms, he could even fully mobilize those smart atoms that were originally only functioning instinctively and not fully working. Aggregating them to form something similar to telekinesis, helping himself to take objects from a distance, or forming optical refraction barriers to achieve invisibility, etc. Sonic immunity, atomic control, intangibility. Viltrumite took stock of the abilities he currently possessed, a nearly crazy and wanton smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Hee hee. Hee hee hee, ha 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 ha, I lack nothing now. The next day, at the municipal high school. OMG, another superheroine has been killed. This time it's Eve from the teen team. Turns out she even went to our school. I really don't know what kind of pervert would be so persistent in targeting superheroines. William put down his phone and looked at Mark, who was packing his things and preparing to leave. Who knows? I hope the global guard can catch him soon. While they were chatting, a tall, sturdy, blond boy walked over. Hey, Grayson. Amber isn't here today, let's see how I fix you. Mark glared at him coldly. He could now throw a fully loaded 100-ton truck out of the atmosphere. This guy coming to provoke him now was just the right chance to teach him a lesson. Without any nonsense, after dodging Todd's punch, Mark delivered an uppercut, sending Todd flying off the ground, backward for 5 or 6 meters, crashing through a glass window. You freak, stay away. Ah! Todd shrieked, struggling to his feet and limping away. William's mouth hung open, and he couldn't help but exclaim. Holy shit, man, your strength is too exaggerated. Did you awaken some kind of superpower? Mark didn't answer him, just smiled and clenched his fist. He only now realized that he seemed to be invincible. After returning home from school, Nolan found Mark, with a look of guilt on his face. Son, I want to apologize. I was too impatient yesterday and didn't consider your feelings. Mark scratched his head with a smile and waved his hand dismissively. It's okay. Even learning to ride a bike involves a few falls, let alone learning how to be a superhero. I didn't take it to heart. However, this scene of fatherly love and filial piety didn't last long before it was interrupted by a voice. Nolan, Mark, it's good that you're both here. Come with me, there is an important matter I want to discuss with you. As the two looked toward the voice, the expressions on their faces were quickly replaced by shock and surprise. Viltrumite, wearing a red suit with white stripes, a suit of the Viltrumite Empire, was hovering in the air at their doorstep, watching them with a smile. Earth is a good place, and I've decided to incorporate it into the Empire's territory in a relatively gentle way. Nolan's eyes widened, caught off guard by Viltrumite's blunt opening statement. Mark was even more bewildered as he looked at his uncle and father, completely failing to understand what was going on. Viltrumite glanced at Nolan, his eyes asking, are you going to explain, or should I? After waiting for 2 seconds and seeing that Nolan hadn't recovered, Viltrumite continued on his own. Mark, you were too young before, so Nolan told a white lie. Now, I will tell you the truth. Mark frowned slightly upon hearing this, a sense of unease rising in his heart. But he didn't interrupt, instead waiting for what Viltrum had to say next. We do indeed come from the planet Viltrum, but we are not a perfect utopian civilization. On the contrary, ever since Emperor Argyle, my father, was assassinated, the Viltrumite Empire was left without a leader, and a long civil war began. Fortunately, the civil war eventually ended. Now, Regent Trigon is in charge of the Empire's power. And now, the total number of pure-blooded Viltrumites in the entire universe is only about 50. Although Viltrumites possess nearly invincible power, we have become an endangered species. At this point, Viltrum paused to give Mark some time to digest the information. He wasn't sure if he was in a parallel timeline or the main universe. Therefore, he had to choose his words carefully to avoid any pitfalls. He needed Mark to empathize with the Empire's situation, that way, convincing him to surrender would be more effective. Mark was silent for a few seconds before speaking hesitantly. So, what exactly do you want to do? What is special about Earth? Viltrum raised a hand to stop Nolan, who wanted to speak, and continued. What's special about Earth is that humans look almost exactly like us and can produce offspring like you. I don't know if your school taught you, but the probability of genetic diseases and deformities from inbreeding is very high. Although for Viltrumites, this situation is greatly improved, it is not completely eliminated. If Viltrumites interbreed with humans instead of the remaining few dozen people marrying each other, this problem can be well avoided. Of course, there is also the most important point. The genes of Viltrumites are highly aggressive. Before you turn 30, you will become a pure-blooded Viltrumite with a lifespan of nearly 10,000 years. Before your appearance becomes like Nolan's, everyone you know, and even their descendants, will have already died. I want to migrate the remaining people of the Empire to Earth to interbreed and reproduce with humans. I don't want my nephew to suffer so much from such separation. Therefore, before you develop deep feelings for too many humans, I want to propagate as many of our kind as possible. At the same time, we can gift the Empire's technology to Earth, making our shared second home even better. Think, Mark. Medical technology advanced by hundreds of years, nearly unlimited clean energy and food, free education, and more complete infrastructure. These can all be achieved within a few months, or even years. Suddenly, a buzzing sound came from not far away, and Cecil appeared in the Grayson family's yard. Viltrum, what did I hear? You plan to add 50 more Omni-Men to Earth, is that right? Then please tell me, what is the cost? Having his family conversation interrupted, Viltrum floated up impatiently, staring quietly at Cecil, his voice turning a few degrees colder. You are trespassing on private property right now, do you know I could kill you? Mark and Debbie, who had just walked out with fruit, were both startled to see Viltrum like this. Viltrum, calm down, Cecil has no malicious intent. Viltrum didn't respond to them, just leaned in slightly and said to Cecil. Submit to the Empire, and we will be good friends. All the benefits I mentioned earlier will be provided free of charge to the whole world. Otherwise, I don't mind showing you how Viltrumites treat planets that don't listen. Cecil took a deep breath, forced a smile, and retorted. Sorry, Viltrum, don't you know about immigration regulations? We monitor even a single ordinary person. Let alone dozens of invincible aliens, don't you think? And, if your numbers exceed a certain limit, we won't be able to regulate you at all. Wouldn't Earth change hands by then? Viltrum didn't refute him, just sneered. I am notifying you, not asking for your opinion. Being ruled by the Viltrumite Empire is your good fortune. The next second, he suddenly reached out and grabbed, while his smart atoms expanded, forming an invisible barrier around them to interfere with the teleporter's signal. Cecil failed to teleport away and was directly grabbed by the throat and lifted up by Viltrum. Mark was still a bit out of the loop, but he didn't speak up to stop Viltrum. Before school ended, that small friction with Todd made him deeply realize how big the gap was between himself and ordinary people. After listening to Viltrum's words just now, he was also thinking about which side he should stand on. Cecil, our previous cooperation was actually quite pleasant. I believe you can also see that I have at least some talent for leadership. Don't make it too difficult for me, okay? Mark seemed to have made up his mind as well, standing up and walking behind Viltrum. I am willing to trust Viltrum. No matter what, as long as it can make this world better, I am willing to give it a try. Seeing things develop to this point, Cecil let out a long sigh and finally raised his hands in resignation. He had to compromise for the time being. He was currently surrounded by 3 Viltrumites, and if he acted up, he would likely be finished. Fine, even if I refuse, it won't make any difference. However, you must at least show some sincerity. Viltrum released Cecil and smiled, patting the wrinkled lapel of his suit. Geez, wouldn't it have been easier if you were like this from the start? Why make things so tense? Afterwards, I will bring a single-digit number of Viltrumites to live on Earth. At the same time, I will also provide some of the technology I promised earlier, just like skilled immigrants. No problem, right? Cecil didn't say much more. Instead, accompanied by a flash of white light, he teleported away directly. Nolan and Mark looked at Viltrum, hoping he would explain what exactly he planned to do next. You two just stay on Earth and continue living as usual. I need to leave for a while and return to the home planet. Then I'll discuss it with the clansmen there to see who would be suitable to bring over to experience life on Earth. Nolan patted Viltrum's shoulder solemnly and said with some reluctance, "Take care, we'll be waiting for your return." After obtaining the ability of atomic control, Viltrum had already taken the time to repair the escape pod that brought him to Earth. Although Viltrumites can go weeks or even months without breathing, they still get tired eventually. By storing this thing in the system's storage space, he could use it to sleep while resting, all while it handled navigation. With a few simple operations by Viltrum, the escape pod, which was originally about the size of a mobility scooter, suddenly expanded to the size of a bus. Although still quite small, it was enough for Viltrum to use for a short time. After saying goodbye to his family, Viltrum's spacecraft accelerated twice in the air and disappeared within Earth's orbit. It wasn't until several minutes after Viltrum left that Debbie finally recovered. Speaking with a face full of worry, Viltrum grew up on Earth since he was a child. Will the Viltrumite Empire accept him? After all, in our history, almost all struggles for power among princes were life or death. Nolan sighed, walked over to his wife, and gently patted her shoulder. You know Viltrum's personality, it's hard to change things once he's made up his mind. Besides, what he said is a fact. Viltrumites do need to reproduce, and Earth is the most suitable choice for them. I believe the people on the home planet, even if they aren't willing to come to Earth, won't make things too difficult for him. He looked at Mark, his expression turning from worry to joy. However, the technology he promised might really be an opportunity for Earth. Mark was still ruminating on Viltrum's words. Advanced medical technology could save more people. Limitless clean energy could solve environmental problems. These were things he, as a superhero, longed to see. I believe Viltrum. He has no reason to lie to us, and he said he would use a relatively gentle approach, didn't he? Just then, Nolan's phone rang. It was a call from Cecil, and his serious voice came from the other end. Nolan, Mark, 5 minutes from now, emergency meeting at the Pentagon. All Global Guard members, representatives from various countries, and heads of relevant departments will be present. Also, notify Ms. Debbie to come as well. We need to understand more information about the Viltrumites. The group looked at each other, and finally, they all nodded, not refusing the invitation to attend the meeting. In the Pentagon's conference hall, the lights were bright, but the atmosphere was unusually heavy. Representatives from various countries sat on both sides, their expressions varied. The members of the Global Guard stood in the front, their eyes vigilant. Cecil stood at the head of the table, and the projection screen in front of him was playing relevant data about the Viltrumites. From Nolan's past combat data to the recording of Viltrum's conversation just now. Everyone understands the situation now, Cecil's voice echoed throughout the hall through the microphone. Viltrum Grayson, Nolan's brother, a pure-blooded Viltrumite, whose strength may not be inferior to Nolan's. He plans to relocate the remaining 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites to Earth to interbreed with Earthlings and provide their advanced technology. Now, we face 2 choices, either refuse and face possible destruction, or accept and promote integration under supervision. A European Union representative stood up immediately. Accept. This is simply inviting a wolf into the house. 50 aliens possessing invincible power. We have no way to control them. What if they go back on their word and want to conquer Earth? To be honest, you don't have the capital to refuse. Even if it were just Mark and me, we could crush all the military forces on the globe. Furthermore, among those 50 people, there are those even stronger than me. Nolan's voice rang out. He walked to the center of the hall, stating the facts with a calm expression. The power of Viltrumites far exceeds your imagination. Conventional weapons are ineffective against us, even nuclear bombs can only cause slight damage. Viltrum is already considered gentle. If it were someone else from the Empire, they probably wouldn't be discussing this with you. Mark also took the microphone and added, he promised to provide advanced technology to improve Earth's environment, healthcare, and education. You know better than I do how bad Earth's situation is right now. At first, I also felt it wasn't great. But now I've figured it out. It's just replacing the people at the very top. If it can really significantly improve the quality of life for civilians, then I believe the majority of people will support it. Debbie sat in the corner and interjected softly, Viltrum has lived in our home for several years. Although he is a bit of a playboy, his nature isn't bad. He said he would treat Earth as his second home, and I am willing to believe him. Besides, I and most other ordinary citizens will be the beneficiaries. The hall fell into debate, with voices of support and opposition rising and falling. Cecil raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. I know everyone's concerns, but currently, cooperation is the only choice. However, we cannot be unprepared. I have decided to establish the Alien Immigration Management Department, specifically responsible for handling the migration matters of the Viltrumites, technology transfer evaluation, integration coordination, and other work. His gaze landed on Nolan and Mark, his expression solemn. Nolan, you are the person on Earth who understands Viltrumites the best, familiar with their culture and power system. Mark, you are a half-blood of Viltrumite and Earthling, able to empathize with the positions of both races simultaneously, and are also more likely to gain the trust of both sides. I hope you can serve as the joint diplomatic officials of the Management Department, responsible for communication and coordination between the Viltrumites and Earth. Nolan hesitated for a moment. He had wanted to live a peaceful life. But looking at Mark's expectant eyes and Debbie's worried expression, he finally nodded. I have no problem with that. Mark also immediately stated, I will do my best to ensure the two races integrate peacefully and not let Viltrum's promises become empty words. Cecil nodded with satisfaction, very good. The office location for the management department will be set in Chicago, adjacent to the Global Defense Bureau branch, to facilitate coordination. I will dispatch the top diplomatic experts, scientists, and security personnel to join. Your main tasks are, first, maintain contact with Viltrum to confirm the specific list of immigrants, arrival times, and related requirements. Second, evaluate the technology provided by the Viltrumites to ensure its safety and applicability, avoiding technological monopolies or potential risks. Third, promote the significance of the integration of the two races to the global public to eliminate panic. Fourth, coordinate with various national governments to designate special immigrant residential areas and formulate relevant laws and management regulations. In this regard, we can provide a certain degree of preferential treatment. As long as it does not involve matters of principle or bottom lines, we will allow the Viltrumites complete autonomy. After all, you are a civilization more advanced than Earth, and your laws may differ from ours. After the meeting ended, the work of the Alien Immigration Management Department began rapidly. An office building in downtown Chicago that had just been completed was requisitioned, and its interior was remodeled. It was equipped with the most advanced communication equipment, security protection systems, and laboratories. Scientists from the Global Defense Bureau began organizing data to prepare for receiving the Viltrumite technology. Diplomatic experts drafted a series of legal proposals regarding alien immigration, discussing and finalizing the rights and obligations of the Viltrumites. Security personnel set up multiple layers of protective nets around the immigrant residential area, including security measures against conventional threats and energy interference devices targeting superpowered individuals. Nolan and Mark quickly threw themselves into their work. Mark was young and energetic, good at communicating with young people, so he took the initiative to handle the publicity work. He recorded a video, recounting his experience as a half-blood and the bright future promised by Viltrum, and posted it on social media. The video quickly sparked heated discussion. Some supported it, others questioned it, but most people were still relatively rational. They felt that as long as those benefits could really be realized, supporting the Viltrumites wouldn't be a big deal. It was just like an election. If the conditions proposed by a candidate met one's expectations, then they could get one's vote. After all, no one is willing to easily give up an opportunity to make life better. Deep in the universe, the silhouette of the Viltrum mother planet loomed faintly within the nebula. This core of an empire that once ruled hundreds of galaxies had now shed its former clamor. Only cold metal structures remained, stretching for thousands of miles. Of course, the most striking feature was the star ring composed of the corpses of tens of billions of Viltrum people. Inside the Imperial Council Hall, dim light illuminated the sharp, angular face of the regent, Trigon, and the skull with a large piece missing that he held in his hand. He wore the red and white patterned Viltrum royal battle suit, symbolizing his supreme status as the temporary wielder of imperial power. Trigon's eyes were as deep as a cosmic black hole, and his entire being radiated an aura of effortless authority. At this moment, a female Viltrum with short black hair and a fair face was crouching in front of the throne. Regent, we have detected an encrypted signal from the edge of the galaxy. The encoding method is the royal exclusive encryption protocol from the era of the late Emperor Argyll, and the coordinates of the signal source point to the planet where Nolan is located. Trigon narrowed his eyes and signaled to Anissa, who was on standby below, to display the information. Soon, the information was displayed before everyone. It was a video. Viltrum first briefly introduced his identity, followed by his main purpose for returning to the mother planet. The council hall fell into instant silence. The few remaining imperial ministers looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Viltrum Grayson, isn't this the eldest son of the late Emperor Argyll? During the royal civil strife back then, Queen Martha disappeared with the young Viltrum, and everyone thought they had long since perished in the cosmic turbulence. It was unexpected that after more than 200 years, they would receive his signal. Viltrum Grayson. Trigon repeated the name in a low voice, his fingertips lightly tapping against the obsidian table in front of him, producing a dull sound. When Queen Martha took him away back then, he was only a 10-year-old cub. How could he appear on Earth? Another unknown alien responsible for signal analysis stepped forward and added, reporting to the Regent, Earth's environmental parameters are highly similar to the Viltrum mother planet, and it is inhabited by intelligent beings whose appearance is almost identical to ours. The signal mentioned that a Viltrum has already settled there. It is the elite warrior with the title of the Great Nolan, and he has even reproduced offspring on Earth. Nolan Grayson. Trigon immediately thought of the name. The elite warrior sent to Earth to execute the infiltration plan back then. I didn't expect him to settle down and have children on Earth, and even accidentally rendezvous with the missing Prince Viltrum. Trigon's fingertips stopped on the obsidian table. His deep gaze swept over the others in the council hall, finally landing on the female warrior who was still standing on standby in front of the throne. She wore a silver-gray tight-fitting battle suit, the clean lines outlining her agile figure, with short black hair neatly pressed against her ears. This person was one of the 4 confidants around Trigon, and also the most gentle among the existing Viltrum people, Anissa. Anissa. Trigon's voice was low and majestic, echoing in the empty council hall. You are to immediately head to the coordinates and escort Prince Viltrum back. Remember, you must treat him with royal etiquette on the surface, do not lose the dignity of the empire. At the same time, take the opportunity to test his strength. I do not want to bring back a weak piece of trash. Anissa stood up, clenched her right hand into a fist in front of her chest, and spoke with sonorous power, as you command, Regent. This subordinate will surely ascertain the truth. If Prince Viltrum lacks strength or harbors ulterior motives, I will control him immediately and bring him back to the mother planet to await judgment. Trigon nodded slightly and flicked his finger, sending a miniature data chip flying toward Anissa. This contains the royal energy signature and encrypted communication channels from the late Emperor's era, which can be used to verify Viltrum's identity. This subordinate understands. Anissa took the chip, embedded it into the communicator on her wrist, and bowed before retreating. A few minutes later, Anissa left the Viltrum planet and rushed toward the direction from which Viltrum had sent the signal. She was equally curious about this prince who had been missing for 200 years, and even carried a trace of unyielding pride. During regular sparring and training, she did not fall behind even when facing veteran generals like Craig. Now that she had heard Viltrum might possess top-tier strength, the fire of excitement to compete with him had already ignited in her heart. Meanwhile, Viltrum's escape pod was sailing steadily through the universe. He had just finished a round of ability fusion training, combining atomic control with sonic attacks. Now, Viltrum could instantly condense several high-density sonic blades, with power sufficient to cut through small meteorites. Just as he was adjusting the sound wave frequency to increase destructive power, the internal alarm of the spaceship sounded, detected a Viltrumite Empire warship approaching from the front. A knowing smile curled the corner of Viltrum's mouth. Trigon had indeed sent someone. He just didn't know who would be the one to meet with him this time. While he was pondering, the spaceship suddenly vibrated violently, feeling just like an emergency brake or even hitting a wall. Looking up, he saw a woman wearing the classic white-based, gray-striped Viltrum battle suit, with short black parted hair, floating in front of the spaceship. At this moment, the woman was holding the front of the spaceship with one hand while sizing him up. That look was just like someone choosing a cat or dog to adopt at an animal shelter. Unable to talk through the glass, Vilum had the AI in the spaceship find him a universal cosmic telepathic communication device. Then, using atomic control, he directly molded one inside his body. After doing this, Vilum left the spaceship and came before this female Viltrum who was blocking the way. Who are you? What is your purpose in stopping me? Answering him was a thunderous, super-powered punch from the other party. Vilum's fighting skills were still quite raw, he could only rely on the wild brawling style from his student days to counter her. Based on her appearance, Vilum guessed that this person should be Anissa, one of the 4 heavenly kings under the regent. Although she was indeed beautiful and well endowed, attacking with the intent to injure or maim right from the start was a bit too violent. After barely resisting a few times, Vilum had already been suppressed to the point where he couldn't fight back. Because he hadn't fought in a long time, and Earth battles were mostly based on sneak attacks and overwhelming stats. Now that he had encountered someone who could actually hurt him, it was inevitable that he was too focused on dodging and defending, and conversely didn't dare to attack. Finally, after being punched in the face for the 3rd time and spitting out a spray of nosebleed, Vilum was also provoked into genuine anger. He etherealized his body to dodge Anissa's whip kick. Because she kicked into empty air, the momentum threw her off balance for a brief moment. Seizing this rare opportunity, Vilum grabbed Anissa's ankle with his left hand and delivered a fierce elbow strike to the outer joint of her knee. Instantly, Anissa's leg was broken at nearly 90 degrees, with the fractured bone shards protruding at an angle. Using a movement technique similar to a single blade charge, Vilum rotated his body half a turn, and his left hand, which had shifted positions, happened to firmly pinch the flesh near Anissa's shoulder blade. Leveraging his momentum forward, he delivered a full-swing flying haymaker that landed solidly on Anissa's nose, almost caving her face in. Watching Anissa, who was trailing a line of blood and tumbling backward, Vilum tightened his fist with satisfaction. He seriously wondered if, since awakening his abilities, he had dealt with too many women, and was now starting to develop in the direction of a wife-beater. Do you want to continue? If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. Vilum caught up, grabbed the collar of Anissa's blood-stained white battle suit, and pulled her bruised and swollen face closer. Anissa coughed up some blood foam, glaring at Vilum with a sullen expression. The situation was clearly that she had lost, but Anissa was still somewhat unconvinced. She couldn't understand why this young kid, who was not even 20 years old according to the intelligence, was so strong. This was thanks to the atomic control ability that Vilum had only recently become familiar with. If one only looked at the data panel, his strength was originally on par with, or even slightly weaker than, Anissa's. But during his voyage, while killing time by researching the abilities he had acquired, Vilum had mastered a small trick, suddenly increasing the density of the corresponding part at the exact moment of impact. Besides making the expanded point sturdier and harder, the instantaneous change in atomic arrangement would also release an extra burst of energy. This was the reason why his attacks, despite having a power output similar to Anissa's, caused significantly higher damage. He had previously seen people joke that Eve was Mark's external biofield. Now it seemed that everyone had underestimated the qualitative change produced when this ability was combined with a Viltrumite. I concede, Prince Vilum. Please forgive my previous offenses. After being punched in the stomach with another uppercut and almost vomiting, Anissa finally relented and chose to surrender. Vilum also guessed that she had most likely been instructed to test his strength while escorting him. Therefore, he didn't dwell too much on the fact that she had attacked without saying a word earlier. In Anissa's extremely shocked gaze, Vilum used atomic control to refresh her state. If she had been beaten into submission before, now it could be called shock. Because Vilum had already displayed either realization before, and now he was showing healing abilities. For a species like the Viltrumites, who relied purely on hard work and sweat, this was simply too overpowered. Young, handsome, powerful, and possessing so many unimaginable special abilities. In her heart, Anissa had already vaguely placed Prince Vilum's status above that idiot regent who only knew how to pressure them. That's the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support our channel for more stories. Hello everyone. This is Fantasy Audiobook. Here you find original fan-made audio stories.
Invincible Young Hero, the First Prince of Planet Way. Part 2. Although he had defeated Anissa, he chose not to plunder her abilities. As she was also a Viltrumite, even if he took her abilities, they would only turn into attribute points. Not only would the improvement be minimal, but it might also put him at odds with the entire empire. There was no need to lose much for little gain. Therefore, not only did he refrain from plundering, but he also helped Anissa heal. This further boosted the recognition and favor of the Viltrum faction. On the way back to the Viltrum mother planet, Vilum was also pondering how to handle his relationship with Trigon. His current situation could be described as a remake of Hujan Dorgan. Although Dorgan was thoroughly taken advantage of by the widow raising children, historically, Huj was the one who lost first. And Huj had military achievements and other buffs. He, in the true sense, was nothing but the eldest son of the royal family. Going over just like that, let alone competing with Trigon for the throne, it was questionable whether he could even survive. Therefore, Vilum decided to first secure some major achievements so that he would have more bargaining chips when returning to the mother planet. After pondering for a moment, Vilum thought of a very suitable target, the Planetary Alliance, which had always been at odds with the Empire. Of course, completely wiping them out was not very realistic, but he could launch a lightning strike on the Planetary Alliance and kill some soldiers and high-level fighters. Not only would this serve as a beautiful pledge of allegiance, but he could also take the opportunity to plunder several abilities that would be very useful to him. For example, the kind of near-death power-up ability similar to a Saiyan, like that of Alan, the planetary evaluator of the Alliance. Combined with the resurrection gear that came with atomic control, he would be directly invincible while also completely eliminating a future threat. However, this plan would have to be formally implemented after meeting Trigon. It was only 2 or 3 light years away from the mother planet now, and turning back to the Planetary Alliance would be a detour. A few minutes later, at the council hall of the Viltrumite Empire, Anissa followed by Vilum's side. Her combat suit had been restored to new by atomic restructuring, and her face beneath her short black hair bore a trace of undisguised awe. Ever since Vilum used atomic control to instantly heal her broken leg bone and severely injured face, the defiance in her heart had been completely replaced by shock. Your Highness, ahead is the Empire's council hall. The regent is already waiting inside. Anissa's voice was much more respectful, no longer carrying the probing and arrogance from before. Vilum nodded slightly without speaking. He had already taken in the entire environment around the council hall through atomic perception. Vilum did not linger at the entrance and walked straight toward the council hall. His leisurely pace was as relaxed as if he were strolling through his own backyard. Anissa followed closely behind, secretly sighing in her heart. This is the aura that a direct descendant of the royal family should have. Even after being missing for 200 years, that innate majesty could still evoke awe in others. The gates of the council hall were crafted from a single piece of black obsidian, towering several tens of meters high. As Vilum approached, the gates slowly opened automatically, and a nearly tangible pressure rushed toward him. The light inside the hall was dim, with only the energy crystals embedded in the ceiling emitting a dark red glow, illuminating the throne in the center and several core members of the Empire standing on both sides. On the throne, Trigon wore a royal combat suit with a red base and white patterns, similar in style to Vilum's, but with a higher proportion of white lines. He held the skull of the former emperor, which was missing a piece, in his hands. His deep gaze locked onto Vilum like a hawk. He kept looking him up and down, his eyes filled with scrutiny and inquiry. On both sides of the throne stood 2 other Viltrum elites, the bald, black guy Lucan and the one-eyed, balding General Craig. Viltrum Grayson, the eldest son of the late Emperor Argyle, after 200 years, you have finally returned. Trigon's voice was low and majestic, echoing in the empty council hall, as he gently placed the skull in his hand onto the armrest of the throne. Vilum walked to the center of the council hall. He did not bow, but only nodded slightly. His tone was calm yet carried an unquestionable royal majesty. Regent Trigon, you have worked hard all these years. Thank you for sending Anissa to escort me, otherwise, I fear I would have been delayed in the universe for some time longer. His attitude was neither humble nor arrogant, he did not deliberately curry favor because of Trigon's status as regent. Nor was he overly ostentatious because of his direct royal bloodline, hitting exactly the balance point of being respectful while maintaining distance. Identity can be confirmed, but what about strength? Trigon's voice turned a few degrees colder, even carrying a trace of provocation and contempt. The Viltrumite Empire does not need a weak prince, especially in such times of survival. Anissa, tell us, what was the result of your sparring with Prince Vilum on the way? Everyone's eyes focused on Anissa. Not only Trigon, but also several other Viltrumites including General Craig and Lucan, all wanted to know exactly how much strength this prince who had been missing for 200 years possessed. Anissa stepped forward and bowed, saying, reporting to the regent, Prince Viltrum's strength far exceeded my expectations. He not only possesses top-tier speed and power but has also mastered two special abilities that we do not have. I cannot specifically describe those two abilities, but I can be certain that his strength can easily crush me. What? The council hall erupted in an uproar. General Craig's expression changed, and he said sternly, Anissa, you are one of the Empire's top warriors, how could you have no power to fight back? Are you deliberately exaggerating? Anissa shook her head, her tone firm, every word I say is true. Prince Viltrum's attacks are precise and fierce. Especially his ability to boost his power a second time at the moment of attack, causing damage far exceeding that of a Viltrumite of the same level. Moreover, he also possesses a power to turn himself into nothingness, directly dodging my sneak attack. Trigon's fingers tapped gently on the throne's armrest, while a storm raged in his heart. With such strength, Viltrum was already enough to threaten his position as regent. Empty words are no proof, why don't I test Prince Viltrum's strength? General Craig stepped forward 2 paces, his fists clenching and making creaking sounds. The muscles under his white-gray combat suit were tensed, clearly ready for battle. He considered himself one of the strongest existing combatants in the Empire and absolutely did not believe that a prince who had been missing for 200 years could be stronger than him. A cold smile curled on the corner of Viltrum's mouth, I'd be happy to oblige. However, the space inside the council hall is narrow. If we damage the relics left by the late emperor, that would not be good. Why don't we go to the training ground outside the hall and settle the score there? That's exactly what I intended. General Craig snorted coldly and headed out of the hall first. Trigon did not stop him, only saying indifferently, stop at the right point, do not harm the royal bloodline. Although he said it nicely, he also wanted to take this opportunity to see with his own eyes just how strong Viltrum's true power was. Besides that, Trigon also had a thought in his mind. If Craig were to accidentally cripple or even kill Viltrum on the arena, then his own position would be even more secure. Of course, if Viltrum were truly brilliant, it wouldn't be impossible to consider stepping down and yielding the throne. But all of this required longer observation and testing. Viltrum grew up on other planets, and it was unknown how severely he had been polluted by local culture. Trigon did not want to invite a wolf into the house and raise an insider threat. Viltrum agreed to spar with Craig. Besides knowing his current level more truthfully, he could also gain the recognition of others. In this way, whether he takes them to attack the Planetary Alliance or returns to Earth in the future, the resistance will be much smaller. Guided by several purple-skinned alien minions, Viltrum and Craig walked together toward the long idol arena. The royal arena on the Viltrum mother planet was forged from a single piece of dark purple star meteorite iron, with a diameter of fully 1 kilometer. Surrounded by an energy shield, it was strong enough to withstand the full force impact of an adult Viltrum. General Craig stood on the left side of the arena, dressed in a white and gray combat suit, with a warlike red light flickering in his single eye. At this moment, Craig stood with his arms crossed over his chest, calmly sizing up Viltrum, who appeared somewhat frail in his eyes. Make the first move, Prince Viltrum, and let me see what kind of flashy, useless tricks you've learned in outer space over these past 200 years. Craig's disdainful provocation echoed throughout the arena. He clearly didn't take Viltrum seriously. Viltrum stood at the other end of the arena, about 50 meters away from Craig. He deliberately refrained from using atomic control in his sonic abilities, keeping his smart atoms at a basic level of activity and suppressing the energy fluctuations on his body to the absolute minimum. After all, the purpose of this sparring match was not a life or death struggle or a show of strength. It was to demonstrate a kind of controllable power to Trigon and those who didn't think highly of him. Furthermore, his sonic abilities were his trump card for ambushing and taking down Trigon in the future, so he definitely had to keep them hidden for now. Only then would Trigon consider grooming him as a puppet instead of immediately harboring murderous intent. At the very least, before obtaining that ability of Alan's, getting stronger after being injured, he couldn't let Trigon kill him. General Craig, watch out. Accompanied by a sonic boom, Viltrum surged forward, starting with a Superman punch aimed straight at Craig's face. To these veterans who had fought for many years, such an open and aggressive attack method was no different from a sitting duck. Seeing this, the disdain in Craig's eyes deepened. In his view, Viltrum was nothing more than an ignorant brat. With a cold snort, Craig stomped his foot, causing the entire arena to tremble, and launched himself toward Viltrumite like a cannonball. His right fist, carrying enough power to easily tear through battleship armor, struck directly at Viltrumite's face. Too slow. Viltrumite's voice was as soft as a whisper, but the moment the fist was about to touch his nose, his figure transformed into a translucent phantom. Craig's heavy fist passed straight through the phantom and slammed into the energy floor, emitting a deafening boom. A crater several meters deep appeared instantly on the floor, with gravel spraying in all directions. So this is what they call intangibility. Craig's pupils constricted slightly. This was his first time seeing such an ability in actual combat. However, his lightning-fast reflexes and combat instincts caused him to instinctively turn and sweep his leg. The shockwave from the leg sweep even dented the metal pillar behind him. Yet this swift and violent strike also missed completely, as Viltrumite's phantom had already appeared on his left. Interesting. Craig grinned cruelly, his attacks becoming increasingly ferocious. He no longer sought a one-hit kill, but instead used an impenetrable rain of fists to seal off all of Viltrumite's movement space. Each punch carried a sharp whistle as it broke the wind, the shadows of his fists weaving into a net of death, compressing Viltrumite's range of motion to the limit. In the spectator stance, Trigon sat upright on his obsidian throne, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. His gaze was locked on the battle in the arena, and Lucan, who was standing by his side, muttered to himself. This intangibility ability is truly troublesome, Craig's attacks can't even touch him. Hearing this, Trigon shook his head slightly, his gaze as sharp as an eagle's. Keep watching. He seems to be limiting his own strength. This kid's power isn't what he's showing right now. However, he isn't hiding much. Craig should be able to force out his limit. Inside the arena, Viltrumite was like a lone boat, weaving nimbly through the tsunami of Craig's fist wind. His intangibility was not flawless. Every time he reappeared, he chose the gaps in Craig's attacks, staying for only a fraction of a second before vanishing again. This extreme control of timing caused every one of Craig's heavy blows to miss, while he constantly exhausted his stamina due to the momentum. Is that all you can do? Is this all our beloved prince has? Craig's breathing began to quicken, and fine beads of sweat seeped from his forehead. This kind of battle made him feel very frustrated, and he couldn't help but become irritable. Viltrumite's phantom solidified behind him, his tone flat. General Craig, raw power is not the only standard for measuring victory, is it? Before his voice had even faded, his right hand shot out like lightning, precisely striking the elbow joint of Craig's arm that had swung through the air. Crack! With a crisp sound, Craig's elbow joint was struck by immense force, nearly dislocating. If not for his body being tough enough, and the fact that Viltrumite wasn't using his full strength, this strike could have shattered his joint directly. Craig let out a pained grunt, his massive body staggering backward as he lost his balance. Viltrumite did not press the attack, but instead slowly stepped back a few paces. He turned back into an intangible state, hovering in the center of the arena with a composed demeanor. Craig took this opportunity to catch his breath for a moment. The continuous high-speed barrage from before had disrupted his breathing rhythm. While panting and clutching his dislocated arm, the shock in his eyes gradually replaced his previous disdain. That's enough. We're all on the same side, let's stop here. Craig, go down and take care of that, and the rest of you, clear out. I want to have a private chat with the prince. Trigon spoke up to interrupt the sparring match, and from the change in how he addressed Viltrumite, it was clear he had already acknowledged this young man. Several confidants and the lackeys serving nearby all retreated. Trigon smiled and patted a sofa-like seat next to him. Viltrumite, come sit and talk. We've been searching for the late Emperor's bloodline for a long time. Now that you're back, the priority is for us to work together to revive the Empire. While saying this, Trigon patted Viltrumite's back warmly, as if they were old, familiar friends, like buddies. Viltrumite took a seat on the obsidian chair beside Trigon and got straight to the point with his plan. This matter was already a high-priority issue for the Empire to solve, there was no need to be secretive. Regent, upon returning to the Viltrum mother planet, my greatest concern is the survival of the Empire. As you know, there are only about 50 pure-blooded Viltrum left, and the dangers of inbreeding are already etched into our bloodline. If this continues, within 1,000 years, we will completely fade into the dust of history in the universe. Trigon lowered his head, silent, moving his eyes away from the shattered skull of the late Emperor in his hand, and looked at Viltrumite with a deep gaze. Since you brought it up yourself, you must already have a countermeasure. Indeed. Viltrumite leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming increasingly serious. Earth is a habitable planet with a relatively backward civilization. More importantly, Earthlings look exactly like us, and the genetic compatibility is as high as 99%. They can provide us with perfect reproductive hosts, avoiding the genetic defects of inbreeding. More importantly, Earth has not joined the Planetary Alliance. If we use it as a breeding base, it won't attract the attention of the Planetary Alliance. By the time they realize it in a few years, we will likely have already restored our population to over 10,000 and can directly steamroll the Planetary Alliance. Viltrumite paused, then continued. Furthermore, the Viltrum gene is extremely aggressive. Mixed blood offspring will completely transform into pure-blooded Viltrum before the age of 30, with a lifespan of nearly 10,000 years. Once they grow up, the Empire will regain sufficient combat power to pursue cosmic hegemony again. More importantly, I have already reached a preliminary consensus with Earth's Global Defense Bureau. They have agreed to let us settle there as technical immigrants, which will not trigger large-scale conflict. Technical immigrants. Trigon raised an eyebrow, the sound of his knuckles tapping on the armrest exceptionally clear in the silent council hall. He was silent for a moment, a glimmer of weighing his options flashing in his eyes. Viltrum's plan did indeed strike at the lifeblood of the Empire. The population crisis was imminent, and Earth was undoubtedly the best current choice. However, he remained wary of this crown prince of the royal family, who had been missing for 200 years and whose strength was unknown. Viltrum's intangibility ability and hidden power made it impossible for him to feel completely at ease. Your plan sounds feasible, Trigon said slowly, though his tone still carried a hint of distrust. But the survival of the Empire cannot be risked. We cannot move rashly based solely on your word. How about this? You lead a small group of people to Earth first to verify the feasibility of the colonization plan. Viltrum's heart stirred. He knew Trigon would inevitably be on guard. Besides, his own plan was to bring back only a single-digit number of people anyway. Even so, to appear young, impetuous, and eager for quick success, Viltrum hurried to look somewhat disappointed. How many people do you intend to send with me? I still hope to bring everyone over as soon as possible. A flash of disdain crossed Trigon's eyes, but he still spoke in a comforting tone, persuading Viltrum. Hey, no need to be so impatient. I'll have Craig and his squad accompany you back to Earth to test the waters first. After all, if too many go at once, Earth won't be at ease, right? By the way, you're quite familiar with Anissa, right? I'll have her accompany you back as well. You are both relatively young, so perhaps you'll get along well. The royal bloodline should be continued, shouldn't it? Afterward, Viltrum checked in with Trigon to get an update on the current state of the Empire. Happily, among the planets ruled by other Viltrumites, 13 were fiercely loyal. This included the group of aliens that had been serving in the Great Hall earlier, as well as the purple-skinned race that acted as prison guards. The group of aliens currently left on the home planet to work as beasts of burden for Trigon, and the others possessed a crop that was extremely high-yielding and did not cause soil depletion, desertification, or salinization. Although it wasn't rice or wheat, which are common on Earth, it was a carbohydrate crop with a very high nutritional conversion rate. At first, when he heard the aliens describe it, Viltrum found it hard to believe. This crop, which looked a bit like blue corn, could actually reach a yield of 170 tons per mu. Moreover, the most exaggerated part was that this thing didn't require peeling, shelling, or other processes like Earth's crops. While still growing in the ground, one could just grab it and start chewing. Its outer skin, inner pulp, and even the supporting stems and roots were all edible as a staple food. What Viltrum found most inconceivable was that this thing was a seasonal crop. From sowing to harvest, it took no more than 100 days in total. Besides that, this race also had a technology similar to compressed capsules, which could compress and store items into capsules about the size of a pill. The volume and weight of a single pill on Earth could transport over 2,500 tons of cargo. Not to mention anything else, just these two technologies could directly realize free daily food on Earth. And such technology was already commonplace, perhaps even considered somewhat outdated civilian tech, on these aliens' home planet. However, even with free food and ultra-efficient transport, this race still couldn't resist the Viltrumite invasion. At the time, it was one of Lucan's subordinates who had gone to their planet. It only took a little over 3 hours to force the planet to surrender. After consolidating the things he needed, Viltrum brought along Craig and Anissa. Along with the members of Craig's squad, 3 small fry characters who didn't have much of a role in the plot. A total of 6 people left the planet Viltrum together. Meanwhile, on Earth, Mark and Nolan were not idle. After completing all preparations, the newly established Alien Immigration Bureau issued an announcement to the world. It invited those aliens who had already been living on Earth for some time to come and register. If they already had jobs and were living relatively stable lives, they only needed to leave a resume-like file. And if they were living in relatively straitened circumstances and needed help, they would also be helped to find suitable work. Besides that, the director and deputy director, Nolan and Mark, spent most of their time at the Global Defense Bureau, helping other heroes fight against various supernatural threats. Under the recommendation of Cecil, Mark joined the combat power squad that Viltrumite had once led, acting alongside them under the codename Invincible. After getting familiar with things during this time, and with the guidance of boxing heroine, Mark had become fully accustomed to the work of a hero. Not only that, in the process of fighting against superpowered villains and resisting alien invasions, Mark gradually became close to the pioneer, who had turned white-haired, and they became lovers. Both were heroes with super speed, and they basically lived together now, so there was no need to worry about being late for dates or being captured and threatened by villains. During the time Viltrumite was away, the Combat Power Squad was renamed the Invincible Team, and their ranking had reached second place, just behind the Global Guard. After all, although the Global Guard had lost Green Ghost, with the addition of Omni-Man and War Woman, their strength was even greater than before, and other hero squads could be said to be unable to keep up. Just as Earth was developing steadily and for the better, the spaceship carrying Viltrumite and the others had arrived about 30 light-years outside the solar system. Something that both surprised and delighted Viltrumite happened. That was, their spaceship had a chance encounter with Alan, the Planetary Alliance evaluator, who was on a date with his girlfriend on a remote planet. A dark red vest, robust muscles, earth-red skin, and that iconic single eye. Even if it deviated somewhat from the comic book image, the Unopen race in this universe was already extinct. Aside from Alan, there basically wouldn't be anyone else who could so brazenly be out on a date. This time, he really had run into the muzzle of a gun. Viltrumite had originally planned to wait until the first batch of Viltrumites were settled on Earth. Then launch a lightning strike on the Planetary Alliance to eliminate the two hidden dangers, Alan and Thaddeus. He hadn't expected to encounter them here by accident. Stop for a moment, I'm going to take care of someone. After temporarily docking the spaceship, Viltrumite ordered the 3 background extras to stay and guard the ship. Afterward, he took Craig and Anissa, and the 3 of them rushed out, aiming straight for Alan, who was teasing small alien animals with his girlfriend. Wow, look, it even spits out its intestines to scare people, how see you? Alan was squatting on the side with his girlfriend when suddenly a blur flashed by. The blue-skinned alien woman, Talia, was instantly smashed into a blood mist. Fragments of organs of various colors and blood showered over Alan. I didn't expect to see you here, the invincible Alan. What are you doing? Alan was stunned by this sudden turn of events, his lips trembling. However, Viltrumite wouldn't give this guy a chance to escape. Without any wasted words, he landed an elbow strike on Alan's face, sending him tumbling backward. Immediately following that, Viltrumite anticipated his movement and appeared above Alan, clasping his hands together and slamming them heavily onto the top of his head. Accompanied by a terrifying sonic boom, Alan's head was almost entirely smashed into his chest cavity, and he slammed into the ground at an even faster speed than before, with half his body sinking into the soil. Don't interfere, I want to kill him myself. Raising his hand to stop Anissa, who wanted to come up and finish him off, Viltrumite dubbed down. Alan, now a bloody mess, was struggling weakly and with difficulty in the large crater he had been smashed into. But before he could catch his breath, Viltrumite's attack had already arrived. He brought both feet down, and just like stepping on a balloon, he completely crushed the already heavily damaged Alan. Killed a sentient being, can perform 1 plunder. Following the system prompt, Viltrumite also saw the ability he had been looking forward to for a long time. 1. Second Wind. After receiving major damage and recovering, you will be enhanced in all aspects based on the degree of damage received. At the same time, you will increase your resistance to the type of damage that caused your injury. 2. Flight. Fly at supersonic speeds. 3. Space Survival. Can survive in space without wearing any equipment. The purpose of his attack in the first place was this ability that made him stronger the more he was injured. Viltrumite didn't care about the other options and directly plundered Alan's second wind ability. This ability, combined with atomic control's near-death resurrection, meant that unless an opponent had the ability to instantly kill Viltrumite, as long as they accidentally left him with 1 breath to recover, they would just be pure experience fodder. Your Highness, did this person have a grudge against you? Craig hurried forward, checked on Alan, who had turned into a puddle of meat paste, and asked in confusion. After all, to actively stop the ship and go down to kill someone just because of a chance encounter on the way, what kind of grudge could that be? But Viltrum's answer was beyond everyone's expectations. There is no grudge whatsoever, this is my first time meeting him. However, does killing need a reason? I started killing when I was 18. Back then, my dad told me, son, it's no problem, you can kill whoever you want, because you are a Viltrumite. Craig and Anissa nodded, that really was the logic. Viltrumites only needed to consider why not to kill someone, not why they should kill them. Let's go. Once we reach Earth, you will naturally understand why I traveled thousands of miles back to the home planet just to bring you there. Ignoring the unknown aliens around them who had already wet themselves in fear, the three of them quickly returned to the spaceship and continued on their way to Earth. At the edge of the solar system, Viltrum's small warship cut through the interstellar dust and slowly sailed into Earth's gravitational field. Inside the bridge, General Craig stood with his arms crossed, his single eye filled with scrutiny of this blue planet. To him, the vast blue oceans and green vegetation on the surface were full of a sense of undeveloped wilderness. Anissa leaned against the porthole, her fingers gently touching the energy glass, watching the city outline gradually becoming clear below, a trace of imperceptible curiosity hidden in her eyes. We will arrive at the designated docking point over Chicago in 10 minutes. You can come and pick us up. Viltrum's voice was calm and waveless as he adjusted the communication channel. As usual, he was ordering around his unlucky younger brother. Nolan should already be waiting for us at the management department. We'll arrange new accommodations for you then. A few minutes later, when the spaceship landed, Nolan and Mark were already waiting there. Nolan was wearing casual gray clothes, while Mark wore a black suit with a name tag featuring the Alien Immigration Management Department logo. Welcome back, Viltrum. Nolan stepped forward, hugged Viltrum heavily, and then turned to Craig and Anissa. Craig, Anissa, you've come too. Earth welcomes you. Craig nodded faintly, his gaze sweeping over the surrounding defense facilities with scrutiny. Anissa just hummed, her eyes remaining fixed on Viltrum. Let's go. Everyone follow me to see the new community specially designated for you. Of course, you can choose your own place if you want to move later. The Global Defense Bureau had set up a residential area for Craig and the others in a newly built commercial district on the outskirts of Chicago. There were many well-known chain supermarkets, cinemas, and shopping malls here. Besides that, it was very close to the stadium and library. This is the residence of you Earthlings. Looking at the rows of detached villas in the community, the contempt in Craig's eyes diminished slightly. In its place was curiosity. The gentle afternoon sun shone down, casting a slight reflection on the dark blue roofs, paired with the surrounding green grass and fruit trees laden with red apples. Combined with the cool breeze brushing against his face, for the first time in so many years, Craig felt a special sensation. This feeling was very unfamiliar, but not just Craig, including Anissa and the other few Viltrumites, all felt an inexplicable sense of peace and tranquility. It's pretty good. Let's live here, Craig said, walking straight towards the house he had set his eyes on at first glance. 2 weeks later, in the outskirts of Chicago. In the community housing the Viltrumites, Craig was squatting in his yard, carefully watering the newly planted roses. These were flower seedlings given to him by the old lady next door last week, who had even taught him how to make flowers grow more vibrantly, step by step. His single eye was narrowed into a slit, focused on watching the water droplets slide down the petals, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curling into a softness he hadn't even noticed. Not far away, Anissa was sitting on a rattan chair on the terrace, wearing headphones and listening to Earth music. The playlist she was listening to had been quietly copied from Viltrum's computer. Because a few days ago, the young man who had a pretty good relationship with Prince Viltrum told her, if you want to pursue a boy, start with his hobbies. Consequently, besides occasionally completing tasks for the Global Defense Bureau, Anissa spent most of her time reading the novels Viltrum wrote, playing the games he usually liked, and looping Viltrum's playlist. Mike, Jeff, and Billy, the three Viltrumites belonging to Craig's team, were gathered at the edge of the community basketball court, playing ball with some Earth teenagers. Watching the teenagers cheering, they laughed along with them. Because they shot accurately and jumped high, the three were affectionately called Mustache Brothers by the surrounding children. These 2 weeks were the most incredible time in their 200-year lives. There was no endless training fighting, no cold orders from Trigon. Only sunshine, delicious food, smiles among neighbors, and those, seemingly useless but exceptionally interesting, daily routines. Craig was no longer that bloodthirsty general. He would go to the community cafe to buy an iced Americano in the morning, or go fishing with Nolan's friend, the tailor shop owner. In the evening, he would sit on the lawn with the 3 girlfriends he had made, eating barbecue, drinking iced beer, and singing, dancing, or chatting together. For the first time, he understood that life was not just about conquest and slaughter, but also about this kind of comforting, mundane life. We cannot let Trigon destroy this place. In the evening, Craig summoned the 4 of them to the basement of his house. The basement had no decorations, only a few simple tables and chairs, but the atmosphere at this moment was exceptionally serious. Craig sat at the front, his single eye lacking its usual belligerence, leaving only determination. Trigon asked me to report on the situation on Earth. His goal is obvious. Once he confirms that this place is suitable for immigration, he will make us conquer Earth as usual. By then, Earth might become a second home planet, full of fighting and slaughter. Craig's voice was low, carrying a bit of worry and hesitation. He was also somewhat afraid that his subordinates wouldn't understand or might even gang up on him. But he still decided to try. The performance of these few people usually didn't look like an act. I have experienced those days, and I don't want to repeat them, much less let the peace here disappear. Are you willing to help me? Anissa nodded, exchanged looks with the other 3, and they nodded to each other. So you had this thought too, then I can rest easy. Prince Viltrumite has his own plans, but Trigon's ambition is too great. He will not be satisfied with peaceful reproduction. All the happy life we have now is given by Earth, and we must protect it. Just then, another person spoke up, putting forward their own thoughts. But we are Viltrumites, loyalty to the Empire is our mission. Jeff was a bit hesitant. The education he had received since childhood was to sacrifice for the Empire. Mission. Mike sneered, taking out his phone and showing the community photos he had taken. The smiling faces of children, barbecue parties with neighbors, the flowers he had watered with his own hands. This is what is worth protecting. There are only 50 people left in the Empire on our home planet. Trigon's strategy will only lead to our extinction. Billy nodded, agreeing with a firm expression. I don't want to fight anymore. This place is great, there is delicious food, friendly people, and I want to live here forever. Finally, the 4 reached a consensus. They would report false military intelligence to temporarily stabilize Trigon and buy time to protect the peace of Earth. The next afternoon, Craig specifically found the most remote restroom in a shopping mall. After confirming no one was around, he connected to Trigon's encrypted communication. He adjusted his expression to make himself look as serious and dutiful as usual. Regent. Craig's voice came through the communicator, carrying a deliberately crafted heaviness. The situation on Earth is more complicated than expected. Oh, tell me specifically. Trigon's voice remained cold, carrying unquestionable majesty. The environment on Earth is indeed suitable for reproduction, and the genetic compatibility between Earthlings and us is as high as 99%, just as Prince Viltrumite said. Craig reported according to the content discussed in advance, but before Trigon could nod, he changed the subject. But the vigilance of Earthlings is extremely high. The Global Defense Bureau has deployed a large amount of monitoring equipment around us. They even installed energy jammers in our residence, trying to monitor our every move. He paused, deliberately emphasizing his tone. Moreover, in less than a month, we have already dealt with 3 waves of invading forces. This place feels a bit thankless. I think the plan to completely occupy Earth and turn it into a breeding base should not be rushed. Trigon frowned slightly upon hearing this, his voice also carrying a trace of displeasure. What about Viltrumite? What is he doing? Prince Viltrumite is indeed promoting cultural integration, but progress is slow. Craig continued to lie. Once familiar, he was now used to this feeling. The governments of various countries on Earth have many contradictions, and their attitudes towards us are inconsistent. Some support, some oppose, making coordination very difficult. Moreover, Prince Viltrumite seems too obsessed with life on Earth, often participating in some irrelevant entertainment activities recently. For example, watching movies and shopping, which makes the promotion of the integration plan even slower. He paused for a few seconds to let Trigon digest this information. Seeing the other party make no indication, he continued to add. In addition, we have found that although Earth's resources are abundant, they are unevenly distributed, and Earthlings are very resistant to resource sharing. The blue corn seeds and compressed capsule technology we brought have indeed aroused their interest, but they want to monopolize the resources and have kept their distance from us, even secretly researching our technology, trying to replicate it to resist us. So, it's not suitable for large-scale immigration at the moment. Trigon's voice also carried a trace of hesitation. Yes, Regent. Craig responded quickly, though he was already secretly rejoicing. Immigration now carries too much risk. Not only could it trigger large-scale resistance from Earthlings, but it might also alert the Star Alliance to our whereabouts. I suggest we continue to stay on Earth. On one hand, to monitor Prince Viltrum's movements to prevent him from being corrupted by Earth culture. On the other hand, to collect more intelligence on Earth and dismantle their resistance forces. When the time is ripe, we will carry out large-scale immigration. Trigon was silent for a moment, seemingly weighing the pros and cons. Craig's palms couldn't help but sweat slightly. He knew Trigon wasn't so easy to fool. Once caught lying, the consequences would be unimaginable. Fine, let's proceed according to your plan. Trigon finally made a decision, which made Craig breathe a sigh of relief. Continue monitoring, keep a close eye on Viltrum's every move, and report to me immediately if there are any abnormalities. Also, try to obtain intelligence on Earth's military deployment and resource distribution to prepare for subsequent immigration plans. Understood, Regent. Craig breathed a sigh of relief and responded respectfully. After the communication ended, Craig leaned against the restroom wall and let out a long sigh of relief. After a few seconds, a trace of relief and determination flashed in his single eye. He took out his phone and sent a message to Anissa, Mike, Jeff, and Billy. It's done. Trigon won't be sending anyone for now. Soon, the four who received the message all replied with, "Don't worry," emojis. For my girlfriends, I must protect all of this. Thinking this, Craig's expression became increasingly firm, a resolute light flickering in his eyes. After walking out of the restroom, he reached out to wrap his arms around the waists of his three girlfriends, and the four of them walked towards the cinema where they had already bought tickets. After temporarily stabilizing Trigon, Craig and the others began to enjoy their wonderful lives in peace. However, just as the movie was halfway through, the emergency contact device on Craig's wrist suddenly began to flash red. After briefly reassuring his girlfriends, Craig went outside the theater to answer the emergency communication. There is a large-scale alien army invasion 3 blocks away from you. The guard team has already gone over. You all should help evacuate the civilians. Craig felt helpless. He relied on the Defense Bureau for food and housing, so when something real happened, it was better to show his face. Soon, Craig arrived at the area indicated by the dispatcher. What met his eyes were swaths of green-skinned aliens wearing white armor and wielding energy weapons. While observing the battle situation, he saw that Anissa and Viltrum had also arrived. After the three of them exchanged glances, Viltrum spoke up. Craig, you save the people. Anissa and I will go directly to the other side of the portal. Although Craig was somewhat worried about the prince's safety, with Anissa accompanying him, it shouldn't be a big problem. Accompanied by sonic booms, the three of them quickly rushed toward their respective targets. The alien soldiers emerging from the portal were instantly smashed into blood mists by the three Viltrumites diving down. Even those who weren't hit directly were blown away by the shockwaves generated by their charge. Without the slightest pause, Viltrum and Anissa had already arrived at the Flaxen planet, which was shrouded under a red sun. You don't seem to understand. It is not your place to invade my Earth. As soon as he finished speaking, Viltrum and Anissa flew off in different directions. They had been training together frequently during this time and had already developed sufficient tacit understanding. Just from that brief eye contact, Anissa understood Viltrum's intention. Since they were already here, they might as well incorporate this place into the Empire's territory. As if competing with each other, the two continuously increased their speed, rampaging across the entire surface of the Flaxen planet. As their speed continued to increase, they inevitably generated high heat from friction with the air, turning Viltrum and Anissa into two fireballs emitting blinding light. The shockwaves stirred up as they flew by had a terrifying power that exceeded a nuclear explosion. Many Flaxen soldiers didn't even have time to scream before they were swallowed by 100-meter-high scorching waves of earth and high-temperature explosions, leaving no bones behind. Although they had carried out large-scale destruction, they intentionally left behind an area that looked like a research facility. The technology and environment of this planet were helpful to the Empire, but these people were unnecessary. In just over 10 seconds, the two had swept across the surface of the Flaxen planet twice. Finally, they met at a place that looked like the royal city, ending with a high five. Although this final high five didn't involve a high-temperature explosion, it still produced a massive, visible sonic boom shockwave with a diameter of over 5 kilometers. The entire Flaxen royal city was like something erased by an eraser. From a fairly exquisite and luxurious large building complex, it turned into a massive crater several kilometers in diameter. The 100 or so Flaxen planet inhabitants who had been specifically spared were now all shivering, looking up at these two demons with tear-stained faces. Many of them were so scared they lost control of their bladders. Filth of various colors flowed onto the ground, looking quite disgusting. Because he had previously made a telepathic communicator, Viltrum could now communicate with them without any barriers. These surviving Flaxen planet inhabitants were mostly wearing white research uniforms, and they were already terrified out of their wits. The elderly lead scholar sat slumped on the ground, the small tentacles on his face trembling continuously. Look up. Viltrum's voice echoed directly in the minds of every Flaxen planet inhabitant through the telepathic communicator. All the Flaxen planet inhabitants raised their heads involuntarily, not daring to dodge in the slightest. They looked at the two demon-like beings before them. It was these two who had destroyed their civilization and slaughtered over 90% of the planet's population in just over 10 seconds. This power to destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth had long since exceeded the limits of their cognition. Now, you have only two choices: submit, and offer up all scientific research data and civilization technology. Or, disappear from this planet completely, along with your remaining research facilities. Anissa stared at them coldly. Although she didn't speak, this silent threat made the Flaxen planet inhabitants even more terrified, and several scholars burst into tears on the spot. The leading elderly scholar took a deep breath and responded with trembling telepathy. We are willing to submit. Please do not destroy our scientific research achievements. They are the crystallization of thousands of years of our civilization. A wise choice. A cold smile curled the corner of Viltrum's mouth as he slowly descended. He hovered about 2 meters off the ground, looking down at them from a superior position. Now, immediately transmit all scientific research data, energy technology, weapon blueprints, and your civilization's core technological data into this device. He waved his hand, activating his atomic control ability, and the atoms in the air rapidly reorganized to form a silver-white metal cube. A technology from one of the civilizations loyal to the Empire, this metal cube, about the size of a magic cube, was actually a micro-supercomputer with unimaginable data storage capacity. The elderly scholar dared not delay and immediately signaled his companions to get up, stumbling as they ran toward the interior of the research facility. Energy technology, portal technology, time flow balancing technology, and other little gadgets, etc. The data transmission progress bar jumped rapidly. Viltrum monitored every piece of data in real time through atomic sensing, ensuring there were no omissions or falsifications. Suddenly, his brow furrowed slightly. A young scholar was attempting to delete a core technology regarding dark matter drive. Viltrum's eyes turned cold, and he casually tore him in two. The scholar let out a scream and then completely ceased to exist. The remaining Flaxen planet inhabitants were too terrified to make any further movements and could only obediently cooperate with the transmission. After about half an hour, all data transmission was completed. Viltrum picked up the silver-white cube and sensed the harvest within. Efficient dark matter energy systems, ecological modification technology capable of adapting to extreme environments, blueprints for a quantum sniper cannon with power comparable to a small nuclear bomb, and even a set of design drawings for an unfinished space-folding transport device. Not bad. As a reward, I will send you to be reunited with your families. Several surviving Flaxen planet researchers hadn't realized what was happening yet and were smiling, thanking Viltrum for his kindness. However, in the next second, Viltrum's figure flashed, and he used a hand blade to decapitate the remaining few Flaxen planet inhabitants. The time flow rate of this planet is hundreds of times that of Earth. I plan to use it as our nursery base. Once newborns are born, they will be sent here for rearing. In this way, all newborns will quickly pass through their relatively fragile infancy period. Anissa couldn't help but widen her eyes upon hearing this. As expected of Prince Viltrum, he easily saw through a strange planet that would have taken us a long time to fully understand. It is truly blood-pumping. I cannot help but be impressed. As for the reason why Viltrum wiped this group out, besides wanting to use it as a nursery area later, And not wanting to leave behind a vengeful race that could be detrimental to the infants, there was a more primary point: they were already useless. Now that Vilum had mastered all the technology of their entire civilization, he had no need for these small fries who had no power and might potentially turn against him to serve as subordinates. Planet fully controlled. Obtained free attribute points +10. Current free attribute points, 11. With a few simple operations, the portal back to Earth opened again, and Vilum and Anissa left the Flaxen planet. Meanwhile, on Earth, only a few minutes had passed, and the Global Defense Bureau's cleanup squad had just arrived at the scene. Your Highness, how is the situation over there? Seeing Vilum walk out of the portal, Craig and the others immediately gathered around. Upon learning about the special environment of the Flaxen planet, as well as the fact that they had killed all the native inhabitants and incorporated the entire planet into the Empire's rule, they couldn't help but feel admiration for Vilum's efficiency and decisiveness. That's great. This way, our population recovery plan can be achieved even faster. Your Highness, please ascend the throne as soon as possible and let us in rebuilding the glory of the Empire. While speaking, the few Viltrumites knelt on one knee in unison, striking their chests with their right fists to pledge their loyalty to Vilum. That night, Vilum, Nolan, Mark, and Debbie sat down for a rare dinner together. Today, I ran into the stone man I met when I first became a hero. He asked me for help dealing with that machine head. But Machine Head has an assistant with teleportation abilities, and they'll escape if I'm not careful. I'm not really sure if I should help. What do you guys think? Nolan stuffed a mouthful of mashed potatoes into his mouth and spoke directly about the downsides. No, I advise you not to do it. He's using you. If you help him, you'll suffer a big loss. Vilum nodded in agreement, and one could even see him trying to stifle a laugh. That's right, you'll end up in the ICU. I'll bet you $100. Mark looked at his mother, Debbie, with some frustration, only to find that Debbie was absent-mindedly fiddling with the food on her plate, seemingly not listening to what they were saying at all. He sighed helplessly. Fine, then I'll consider. Just as Mark was about to give up, Vilum's phone suddenly rang. After answering, Anissa's voice came from the other end. Your Highness, we have found the person you ordered us to keep an eye on. I am sending you the coordinates now. Not long ago, Vilum had asked Anissa and the others to keep an eye on the Teen Team's strategist, Robot. Looking at the coordinates they sent, pointing to a seaside warehouse, Vilum knew that the situation he had anticipated must have happened. Robot should have secretly let the Mahler twins go by now, asking them to clone a healthy human body for him. And this guy, Vilum didn't want to keep him around. Although he was quite talented at managing that sector, for Vilum and the Viltrumite Empire, the disadvantages always outweighed the advantages. Therefore, today was his death day. With a simple greeting, Vilum disappeared from the dining table. When his figure became clear again, he had already arrived outside the warehouse where the Mahler twins were cloning a body for Robot. Usually, Robot's deformed body was hidden inside the Defense Bureau, making it hard to strike. Now that he had come out himself, he couldn't blame Vilum for being ruthless. Without the slightest hesitation, Vilum walked through the wall and grabbed an instrument nearby, smashing it heavily onto the incubation pod containing the two bodies. Robot was smashed flat along with the instrument, and blood seeped out from the cracks in the smashed floor. After smashing it 4 or 5 times, confirming that Robot's two bodies, the instrument used for cloning and consciousness transfer, and his drone guards were all reduced to fragments, Vilum stopped. The system prompt also appeared immediately. Kill intelligent creature, you can perform 1 plunder. 1. High intelligence, can significantly improve brain computing power, as well as knowledge reserves related to mechanics and biology. Seeing this, Vilum curled his lips in disdain. What trash, only such a useless ability. After plundering Robot's intelligence, Vilum could feel that his understanding and usage of the technology plundered from the Flaxen star became more handy. The parts he didn't quite understand before were also understood in a short time and could be used proficiently. However, being able to get these things by killing a freak was already worth it. Judging from the previous events, his current universe was likely a parallel universe that was highly similar to the main universe, but not the main universe itself. Therefore, Angstrom Levy, who had the ability to open multiverse portals, should not be in his universe. In that case, there was no need for the Mahler twins to exist either. At this moment, the two had already raised their hands, trembling and indicating their surrender. But Vilum did not give them any chance to turn over a new leaf, directly flying over and smashing them into pieces. Kill intelligent creature, you can perform 2 plunders. 1. Cloning and consciousness transfer technology. Cloning technology that exceeds the current technological level, as well as related knowledge. 2. Bulletproof body. Physical toughness sufficient to resist machine gun fire. 3. Super strength. Power that can easily lift a car. These two were slightly useful, but apart from the knowledge related to cloning, the other abilities could only be converted into free attribute points. Immediately afterwards, Viltrum used atomic reconstruction to resurrect the Mahler twins, and then killed them again. Because the plundered ability already has a higher level replacement, the repeatedly plundered ability has been converted into free attribute points. Current free attribute points, 14. When he killed Eve and Alan before, Viltrum hadn't realized it in time and forgot to resurrect and kill them again to farm attribute points after they lost their near-death strengthening ability. This time, he didn't forget, and he wouldn't stop until he had completely plucked the Mahler twins dry. Now that he didn't need to hide, Viltrum didn't cover anything up. After killing them, he left with Anissa. Since his dinner was interrupted, he didn't go back to finish it. Instead, he decided to help Mark by solving Machine Head in advance. Although the Mark here didn't have any no-kill principle or hesitation like the one in the main universe, his overall strength was relatively weak. Viltrum wasn't sure how strong the battle beast in this universe was. To be safe, and also to obtain Isotope's teleportation ability, he decided to launch a surprise attack on Machine Head's company and try to kill both of them. Based on his memory and the information he had seen at the Defense Bureau, Viltrum and Anissa quickly found Titan, who had the petrification ability. Tell me, where is Isotope's girlfriend? As soon as he entered the door, Viltrum got straight to the point. Titan was stunned for a moment, but quickly reacted. Viltrum and Mark were on the same side. Now that he appeared here, he must be here to help him take care of Machine Head. Suppressing his slightly excited mood, Titan went outside the room with Viltrum. Subsequently, he told Viltrum everything he knew that would be helpful for this operation. Somewhat unexpectedly, Isotope's girlfriend lived very close to the community where Anissa lived. Moreover, Anissa had met her a few times at the library at the intersection of the two communities, belonging to the kind of nodding acquaintances who were somewhat familiar. After learning this information, Viltrum thought of a method: kidnapping. According to Titan's description, Isotope loved this girlfriend very much, and the two had plans to get married. It was easier to solve things when there were people they cared about. That same evening, Viltrum brought the young woman named Rhea to a seaside warehouse. Hey, are you Isotope from Beyond Science Inc? Your girlfriend is in my hands. Bring 1 million within 2 hours to redeem her. As he spoke, Viltrum gently pinched Rhea's finger, making her scream in pain. On the other end of the phone, Isotope's voice immediately became anxious. Friend, we're all in the business, don't drag family into this. I will definitely deliver the money, please don't hurt her. Give me a little more time, I'm going to gather the money. Viltrum sneered and said impatiently, time's up, no deal, and hung up the phone directly. After making the call, Viltrum glanced at the tied-up Rhea and comforted her with a smile. Don't be afraid, we aren't good people. After the show is over, we will send you 2 lovebirds to reunite. Hearing this, Rhea's terrified eyes widened, and she struggled continuously. If her mouth hadn't been sealed, she probably would have let out a sharp, piercing scream. Soon, an hour passed, and a white light suddenly flashed in the warehouse. Along with the light appeared a man with graying hair, a short ponytail at the back of his head, and a purple suit. The person who arrived was Machine Head's capable subordinate, Isotope. He was also the real target of Viltrum's operation this time. Brother, everyone has difficult times when they're out in the business. The money is here, release her first. Before he could finish speaking, half of Isotope's body was smashed into a blood mist by Viltrum, who rushed over. Kill intelligent creature, you can perform 1 plunder. 1. Teleportation, can teleport oneself or a designated target to any location in this universe. Even if the specific coordinates are unknown, fuzzy positioning can be performed. Looking at the new ability he had obtained, the corners of Viltrum's mouth couldn't help but curl up wildly. This move could not only teleport himself and take people with him, but also teleport people from other regions or even other planets over. Of course, the only small drawback was that he couldn't teleport others to a designated location without being there himself. He had to go with them, or teleport people from other places to his side. For example, teleporting an opponent directly into the sun while staying in place was not possible. But even so, this ability was already very heaven-defying. To some extent, it was even more convenient than the instant transmission in Dragon Ball. With a fruitful harvest tonight, Viltrum didn't kill Isotope's girlfriend, Rhea, but instead took Anissa and teleported away from the place. The Pentagon, White Room. Cecil and Donald were analyzing the various items collected from the crime scene of Robot and the Mahler twins. Sir, the modus operandi is extremely similar to the previous killings of Green Ghost, Nighthawk, and Adam Eve. I believe it was done by the same person. Cecil rubbed his chin, saying nothing, just silently looping the 3-second video barely restored from the drone. In the video, a familiar figure flashed by. Although very fast, even slowed to the limit of current technology, it was still blurry. However, based on the blurry outline, Cecil already had a guess in his heart. Do you think it's possible that the person who committed these murders is Viltrum? Otherwise, why would that guy have been a couch potato for over a decade, only to suddenly request to join the Defense Bureau a few months ago? And within a month of him joining, Nighthawk and Eve died one after another. Furthermore, after Viltrum left Earth, there were no more hero deaths. And now, shortly after his return, this situation has started again. Donald nodded and stated his thoughts. Based on known intelligence, he is indeed the prime suspect. But I still don't understand, what is his purpose in doing this? Logically, the heroes who died were not very active and had relatively weak combat power. With the strength of a Viltrumite, there is no need to care about these people. Cecil rubbed his temples, sighed long, and then spoke again. No, I don't think it's that simple. First, what is certain is that Viltrum joined the Defense Bureau and took the position of dispatcher. His main goal was definitely to collect hero data. This can be seen from the fact that after he joined, he repeatedly accessed hero data outside his jurisdiction. Speaking of this, not just Cecil, even Donald felt they had touched upon a clue. Without hesitation, Donald seized the moment of inspiration. He quickly used administrator privileges to log into Viltrum's work account and checked his work logs. Sure enough, Viltrum had used the global search function and searched for the option Sonic. Although this seemed like a one-time choice, and he only looked at this tag once. More often, he queried tags like Speedster, Healing Ability, etc. He even searched for heroes in South America proficient in martial arts more than a dozen times. It seemed he was more interested in these types of ability users. However, the Sonic tag was the first record Viltrum searched for after obtaining permissions. Combined with the fact that Nighthawk died shortly after he searched for the Sonic tag, the other searches seemed like a cover-up. After 2 seconds of silence, Cecil and Donald exclaimed at the same time. Could it be that powerful sonic waves are the weakness of Viltrumites? The two looked at each other and again called up the data of all Sonic-type ability users. This type of ability user, including heroes and villains, totaled more than 30 people. And there were 2 active in Chicago alone. But Viltrum went far away to Mexico to kill Nighthawk. That indicated one thing. Viltrumites fear a certain special frequency of sonic waves. Nighthawk happened to fit this standard, so she became his hunting target. But what about Green Ghost, Adam Eve, and Robot? Their abilities could be described as mediocre. Why did Viltrum target them? Of course, all the above arguments were based on the conjecture that starting from Green Ghost, all these dead heroes died at the hands of Viltrum. Except for Robot and the Mahler twins, whether the others died at the hands of Viltrum still needs further verification. Suddenly, Cecil shook his head and wiped his face with some helplessness. Actually, whether he did it or not doesn't matter. Or rather, even if Viltrum admitted it, we can't do anything to him, can we? Donald was also a bit embarrassed and powerless. Cecil was right. Even if they found out Viltrum killed them, what then? Earth now has no ability to check and balance Viltrumites. Nolan alone is enough for them to handle, and now there is Viltrum, Mark, and the few people Viltrum brought back. Besides the inability to compete in strength, they now control nearly infinite high-yield grain, high-end medical resources, clean energy, and other monopolistic industries. Having gotten used to the good life, if they fell out with the Viltrumites and they took back the technology, it would likely cause massive social unrest. However, there is no need to be too pessimistic. I think we can explore the sonic direction further. When there is an opportunity, pretend it's an experimental error and test whether Viltrumites are really afraid of special frequency powerful sonic waves. This way, we can have more trump cards. Having a sword and not using it is different from not having a sword at all. Donald nodded and turned to make arrangements. He prepared to have the technical department focus on researching Nighthawk's data, attempting to replicate her special sonic waves and make them into weapons. While the Global Defense Bureau was trying to find the weakness of Viltrumites, Viltrum's side was relatively comfortable and relaxed. After the brought back technology was promoted and operated, it not only benefited the people but also brought Vilum a large amount of resources. This included but was not limited to connections in political and business circles, massive funds, etc. These should not have had much meaning to a Viltrumite, but Vilum turned them into the first step in promoting the Empire's experimental field. Originally, the rule of the Viltrum Empire felt like conquering for the sake of conquering. In fact, after conquering so many planets, the improvement to Viltrum itself was not very significant. After all, for a race that can travel faster than light in the universe without any protective gear and can pierce planets just by physical impact, most technology is actually meaningless. Therefore, after realizing free food, free medical care, and almost free public facilities in most areas, Vilum decided to truly begin implementing his second strategy, demilitarization and entertainment to death. This is a strategy that can truly destroy a group's bloodthirstiness and resistance consciousness. When a person is immersed in an environment of getting something for nothing and entertainment to death from birth, if you ask them to resist and fight for freedom at this time, they might even become dissatisfied with you. After finalizing the strategic goal, Vilum quickly began to act. First, it was a super large press conference covering the whole world. The live broadcast camera pointed to Chicago, at the top floor of the supercomputing technology building in the city center. Vilum, wearing a well-tailored silver-gray custom suit, stood in front of the fully transparent floor-to-ceiling windows, with the brightly lit city skyline behind him. He looked calm, his eyes deep, and his voice transmitted to every terminal in the world through the quantum communication network, clear and penetrating. Good afternoon, citizens of Earth. Vilum raised his hand to signal, the camera slowly zoomed in, and his gaze seemed to penetrate the screen and fall on every viewer. 3 months ago, we brought high-yield blue corn planting technology, allowing most regions to completely say goodbye to food shortages. We shared clean energy core algorithms, making electricity and gas bills history. We opened the Viltrum medical database, allowing everyone to receive the top resources for free for all diagnoses, from colds to terminal illnesses. He paused, and the screen behind him simultaneously displayed charts showing a surge in global grain reserves, clean energy coverage exceeding 90%, and the equalization of medical resources, with every set of numbers intuitively showing the results of the transformation. Today, when survival is no longer a problem and scarcity has become a thing of the past, we are finally qualified to move towards the next stage of civilization. A brand new era with happiness as the core and blooming as the goal. Here, on behalf of the Viltrum Empire and the Global Defense Bureau Joint Council, I announce 2 strategic policies that will completely reshape human civilization, first implemented in the Americas. The first item, complete demilitarization and the construction of a superhero security system. Speaking of this, Vilum's voice raised a bit, with unquestionable determination. Throughout human history, the existence of the military has always been accompanied by huge consumption of resources. Especially in times of peace, military spending has crowded out investment in education and medical care, and weapons research and development has wasted wisdom that could have been used to improve life. More importantly, under the protection of Viltrumites and the rise of superheroes, traditional armies have long lost their meaning. The screen switched, playing scenes of Nolan pushing away an asteroid the size of a country, Anissa destroying an alien fleet single-handedly, and Mark saving a crashing flight. Every shot highlighted the efficiency and reliability of superheroes. From today on, the armies of all countries in the Americas will be officially disbanded, and related military expenditures will all be transferred to the People's Livelihood Security Fund. We will only retain the minimum police force to be responsible for daily affairs such as neighborhood disputes and traffic guidance. And all security issues involving violent crime, terrorist attacks, and alien invasions will be taken over by the Superhero Alliance. He raised his hand, and the organizational structure of the Superhero Alliance appeared behind him, with the names of Nolan, Mark, Vilum, Craig, and others prominently at the forefront. Nolan and I will serve as the top commanders of the Alliance, and Anissa, Craig, and other Viltrumite warriors will be stationed in different zones. Combined with Earth's local hero forces, we will build a 3-dimensional defense network covering land, sea, and air. Past actual combat has proven that we can destroy invading alien fleets in 10 seconds and quell large-scale riots in 3 minutes. Such efficiency is unmatched by any traditional army. You no longer need to fear war, because the strongest line of defense is already standing in front of you. Speaking of this, Vilum paused for a moment, raised his hand, and the light screen behind him changed to new content. The second item, All industry entertainment transformation, allowing everyone to enjoy happiness. Do what you want to do but had to give up because of the burden of life. Viltrum's tone became gentle, and warm scenes of people picnicking in parks, watching movies in cinemas, and interacting in live broadcast rooms appeared on the screen. When infinite food, free energy, and universal medical care are covered, why should we let ourselves be trapped in repetitive labor? Mechanical operations on factory assembly lines, ineffective overtime in office buildings, heavy labor in farmland. These jobs that should have been done by machines are consuming humanity's most precious creativity. He stretched out his finger, and a 3D model of a high-intelligence AI appeared on the screen, which was the management system that fused the technology of the Flaxen planet. From today on, most production, manufacturing, and service industries in the Americas will be cancelled. All infrastructure, transportation, energy, water conservancy, communications, will all be taken over by high-intelligence AI. These ICE are equipped with the core algorithms of the Flaxen civilization, which can complete resource allocation and facility maintenance at 300,000 times the efficiency of humans. And zero errors, zero loss, completely eliminating accidents caused by human negligence. Reaching this point, Viltrum hooked the corner of his mouth with a confident smile, and his tone changed. And every citizen of Earth will be liberated from tedious labor and fully transition to the entertainment industry. Viltrum's voice was full of temptation, and it did make people who heard this news feel a throb. After all, just a few months ago, many people were still selling blood at blood stations to have money to buy groceries. Working 3 jobs at the same time, or signing contracts for installment small loans to conduct fresh vegetable installment payment. And now, this pie that Viltrum drew directly gave the bottom-level working people who were struggling to survive and had to guard against being affected by superpower battles a sense of confusion and happiness. You can become a live streamer, sharing the little beauty in life. You can devote yourself to film and television creation, using the lens to tell the story in your heart. You can pick up musical instruments, using music to convey emotions. You can join a game development team, building your own virtual world. No matter what you are good at, what you love, you can find your place in the entertainment field. He raised his hand to signal, and the screen listed detailed guarantee plans. Everyone's basic living needs, food, water, energy, medical care. Still fully guaranteed by us, without any labor exchange. At the same time, we will set up a 100 billion level entertainment creation fund to provide high rewards for high quality works. Build a global shared creation platform, let your talent be seen by the whole world. Perfect the copyright protection system to ensure that every creation can get the return it deserves. You don't have to run for a living anymore, don't have to worry about mortgages, don't have to worry about old age, just focus on what you love, and enjoy the pure happiness brought by creation and entertainment. Viltrum walked to the screen, his gaze firm. Perhaps some people will question, will such a transformation bring chaos? I can clearly tell everyone, no. When survival needs are completely satisfied, when everyone can realize their self-worth in the fields they love, the soil for crime will completely disappear. The Superhero Alliance will protect your safety, AI will ensure the stability of infrastructure, and the entertainment industry will become the core driving force of civilization development. Finally, Viltrum made a phased summary. Human civilization has been fighting for survival for thousands of years. Fighting against nature, fighting against the same kind, and playing games with scarcity. But today, we stand at a turning point. The change has begun, and the future is within reach. Viltrum nodded slightly, his tone carried the ease of controlling everything. I invite every resident of the Americas to put down the shackles of the past and embrace this brand new era. Let us use singing to replace shouting, creation to replace fighting, and laughter to replace anxiety, and write the most brilliant chapter of human civilization together. Respect to the Viltrum Empire, respect to the 7-day rest. He raised his hand, and the huge slogan, New Chapter of Civilization Entertainment First, appeared on the screen behind him. After staying for a few seconds, the live broadcast ended, and the quantum communication signal was cut off simultaneously. And the cheers and discussions around the world had just begun. Viltrum looked at the surging crowd on the screen, the corner of his mouth hooked into a smile that was hard to detect. He knew that the shackles of entertainment to death had been quietly put on the neck of human civilization. And this was just the second step of his experimental field for imperial rule. After the press conference ended, Cecil teleported directly to Viltrum's side and questioned him face to face. What the hell are you playing at? Can I interpret your speech just now as a declaration of rule? Vilum flashed, and in the split second before Cecil could teleport away, he grabbed him by the throat. Director Cecil, watch your tone. Before he could finish, several beams of light flashed, and the global guard was teleported in. Moreover, each of their communication wristbands was equipped with an unknown small device. This was the research result Donald had worked on through the night over the past few days, a sonic weapon specifically designed to attack Viltrum people. Accompanied by a piercing, oscillating sonic wave, Vilum clutched his ears in pain, screaming as he collapsed to the ground. As Vilum lost his combat effectiveness, Cecil was released. Red speed flashed forward and moved the director to a safe distance. What is this? Arg. If I'm not mistaken, you killed Nighthawk because her sonic waves could hurt you, just like this, right? Vilum looked at Cecil, trembling, his face full of pain and unwillingness. Arg. If you have the guts, kill me, or I'll wipe you all out. Not giving Vilum a chance to continue running his mouth, Battle Girl, Immortal Hero, Red Speed, and Sea King stepped forward together, preparing to use special shackles to restrain him. This guy's ambition to rule Earth was now obvious. No matter how nicely he put it, he was essentially an invader. If they really let him dismantle all military forces, wouldn't they just be sitting ducks waiting to die? Hey, finally fell for it. Just as the group surrounded him, less than 2 meters away from Vilum. Vilum, who had been clutching his head and convulsing in pain, suddenly stood up with a smile, looking completely fine. Immediately after, Vilum grabbed the heads of Red Speed and Battle Girl and slammed them together violently. With a splat, the two top superheroes of the Global Guard were decapitated on the spot. A mixture of red and white gore sprayed all over the faces of Sea King, Martian Man, and Immortal Hero. With a hand blade strike, Immortal Hero was split vertically in two. Not far behind him, Darkwing was smashed in the upper body by the half of Immortal Hero that Vilum had grabbed, cosplaying as a split character. Sea King raised his hand to release a water jet attack, but it missed completely. Apart from washing the headless corpses of Red Speed and Battle Girl, it caused no damage at all. The next second, Vilum's fist punched through the back of his head and came out the other side. From the moment Vilum stood up to the moment Sea King's head was punched through, less than 10 seconds had passed in total. Cecil was stunned. Why was the sonic weapon, which could cause Mark extreme discomfort and even make him unable to stand, completely ineffective against Vilum? And wasn't the gap in strength between him and the Earth's superheroes a bit too exaggerated? The group could be said to have had absolutely no power to fight back, shattering upon contact like paper cutouts. What he didn't know was that this performance was achieved without Vilum even adding any attribute points, relying purely on his familiarity with the heroes and a close-range sneak attack. Now, the only one left of the Global Guard was Martian Man, who hadn't had time to rush up. Naturally, he didn't escape either. Vilum didn't charge, but instead used short-range teleportation to simulate a flash effect. After suddenly blinking in front of him, he tore out the core that acted as his heart. Sigh, why do you do this? Why force my hand? As the battle ended, a series of system prompts popped up. Kill intelligent lifeform, can perform 6 loot actions. 1. Immortality, endless lifespan. After death, as long as the body is relatively intact, resurrection is possible through repair. 2. Weapon mastery. Master all currently known cold weapons and gain a certain increase in strength. 3. Super speed. Possess super speed approaching the speed of light and equivalent reaction speed. 4. Water control. Control water molecules, can release water currents out of thin air or guide surrounding water for personal use, while also possessing the ability to breathe underwater. 5. Shapeshifting. Arbitrarily change body shape within a certain limit. 6. Shadow space. Can freely enter and exit shadow space. For convenience, set as the first generation of Darkwing in this universe possessing shadow space ability. In addition, there are flight abilities, super strength, etc., shared by Battle Girl, Immortal Hero, and Martian Man. These can be looted a second time to serve as free attribute points. Soon, under Cecil's shocked gaze, a ball of pink-purple light, extremely similar to Eve's, lit up on Vilum's hand. The Global Guard he had just killed were resurrected. What is going on? Unfortunately, before he could finish his swear word, Vilum's hand blade flashed, instantly killing the group who had just woken up and were still confused. Because the looted ability already has a superior substitute, the repeatedly looted ability has been converted into free attribute points. Current free attribute points, 20. Immortal Hero's endless lifespan, Martian Man's shapeshifting, Darkwing's shadow space. Plus weapon mastery, which seems useless but provides significant assistance in same-level combat, and red speed super reaction speed. Viltrum can be said to have hit the jackpot this time. He was already almost unsolvable, and now he is even more devious, with nothing on Earth left to restrain him. On this basis, he also gained nearly 10 free attribute points. Once he finishes adding them later, he will completely take off. Without delay, Viltrum added the attribute points directly to strengthen Constitution. There are very few people with mental-type attacks in the current universe, and those who have such abilities usually cannot keep up with his speed. Therefore, Viltrum did not choose to increase his mental attribute, but prioritized Constitution and Strength to ensure his defense, output, and stamina were strong enough. Host. Viltrum Grayson Race. Viltrum Royal Family Direct Lineage Age, 18. Strength. 20 Adult Viltrum. 10 Constitution. 21 Adult Viltrum. 10 Mental. 11 Adult Viltrum. 10. Abilities. Super Strength, Super Speed, Steel Body, Superluminal Warp, Light Speed Reaction, Weapon Mastery, Atomic Control, Intangibility, Afterglow, Mechanical Intelligence, Biological Cloning Intelligence, Immortality, Sonic Immunity, Sonic Control, Shadow Space, Shapeshifting. Currently controlled planet, Flaxen Planet. He didn't realize it until he looked. Even Viltrum himself was startled. Wow, have I become this devious? And the battle just now naturally attracted the attention of other Viltrum people. These 5 were now fiercely loyal to Viltrum and felt very angry about the Global Guard's sneak attack. 5 sonic boom clouds approached rapidly, and then the Viltrum squad instantly protected Viltrum in the center. Anissa's eyes were slightly red, and she gritted her teeth as she charged at Cecil. Daring to touch Viltrum was no different from dancing on his minefield. She had already developed the intent to kill this old man. Old thing, you're courting death. Amidst the roar, Anissa had already rushed to the front, grabbing Cecil and lifting him up. Wait a moment, Anissa. Let's keep this old man for a while. He can't do anything to me now. It's perfect, let him see what the new world actually looks like. Anissa narrowed her eyes at Cecil and threw him to the ground. Afterward, she spat in dissatisfaction. Kneel and give thanks, withered bug. By comparison, Viltrum's attitude was slightly better. Wait patiently for a month or so, Director Cecil. We were never meant to be enemies. After leaving these words, the few Viltrum people flew away with Viltrum. Cecil squatted on the ground, taking several deep breaths, only then finally calming down. He walked to the steps nearby and sat down, not in a hurry to return to the Defense Bureau. Sitting alone like this, he began to ponder the meaning of Viltrum's words just now. However, no matter what, Viltrum had killed so many heroes who had made significant contributions to Earth. Cecil really didn't want to acknowledge such a ruler. Moreover, what made him feel even more terrified was the ability Viltrum had just displayed, which was extremely similar to Adam Eve's but of a higher grade. Could it be that this guy could obtain the abilities of the people he killed? If this hypothesis was true, then the reason Viltrum wasn't afraid of the sonic weapon was clear. He had killed Nighthawk and obtained the same ability as Nighthawk. Then, the sonic weapon designed based on Nighthawk would naturally be ineffective against him. After all, in previous tests, it could be seen that Viltrum people really had zero resistance to sonic weapons. Viltrum targeting Nighthawk first must have been to obtain her resistance, which made her almost immune to sonic waves. If Viltrum were here, he would definitely be unable to help but applaud Cecil. He had only just revealed a non-Viltrum superpower in front of him for the first time. Yet, with just such a small display, the old man had actually deduced most of his system functions and his motive for killing. However, it didn't matter if he showed his cards now. After all, he had a hand of Ka2 and a chain of bombs, while the opponent had scattered cards like 3, 4, 6, 7J. In such a crushing game, keeping an audience could actually add some amusement. To Cecil's surprise, the policy of demilitarization was most supported by the soldiers of America. Originally, the Department of Defense and the military had some resistance. The bigwigs didn't want to lose power. But under the iron fist of Viltrum, in less than 3 hours, the heads of all oil, power, and arms dealer factions across the Americas were completely wiped out. The ability to be so efficient, besides the invincible power of the Viltrum people, was also due to the help of the collaborators. With food, energy, public facilities, and medical care all free, for most people, currency had lost its meaning. Therefore, the methods used by the big capitalist sharks to win people over became ineffective. More than half of the hardliners were tied up by their own bodyguards, adjutants, or personal guards and delivered to the Viltrum people. The rest of the people were already tired of military life. Now, without superiors and with the joy of being able to return home, the army disbanded on the spot. As for the remaining weapons, especially nuclear weapons, they were all confiscated by Viltrum and stored in the system space. The implementation of demilitarization in the Americas also drove the Asian region. Small subordinates of the US, like the Koreans and the Japanese, half forced and half voluntarily cancelled their armies. In just 1 month, the only countries in the world that still retained armies were a few led by the Dragon Kingdom and North Korea. However, they also reduced the size of their armies to some extent. Viltrum didn't care about this. If he wanted to, destroying the Earth wouldn't take more than 24 hours. If they want to keep them, let them. Anyway, as long as these countries are willing to produce high-quality entertainment works for him, that's fine. Cecil originally wanted to sanction the dictator Viltrum, but after seeing the changes on Earth, he directly announced his retirement and stepped down. Thus, the Global Defense Bureau transformed into the Viltrumite Empire's Earth Administration Committee. Now that the situation on Earth was basically stabilized, Mike, Jeff, and Billy, the 3 subordinates brought by Craig, had each found wives. They and Craig secretly contacted about 20 other Viltrum people they were familiar with and came to live on Earth together. Under their joint corruption, these once cold-blooded executioners sank into the land of gentleness within just a few days. Although they were inferior compared to the family man Craig, after a few months of living there, each of them had at least 2 partners. 1 year later, the military bases that once covered the Americas had now completely changed their appearance. Beside Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, the former tank training ground had been transformed into a giant holographic cinema, playing global blockbuster movies 24 hours a day. The naval base in California had turned into a water park, and the former warship decks had been converted into water slides. Soldiers in military uniforms could no longer be seen on the streets, replaced by patrolling intelligent robots. They were small in size, equipped with satellite early warning devices, and required no human intervention throughout. High-intelligence AI and robots took over almost all labor. Urban traffic was centrally dispatched by AI, and self-driving hovercars shuttled in an orderly manner, with no more congestion or accidents. In the fields, tracked robots precisely sowed and harvested blue corn. After the mature crops were encapsulated in compressed capsules, they were delivered by drones to the free supply stations in every community. Maintenance of water and electricity networks, building repairs, and even restaurant cooking and express delivery were all handled by robots with different functions. Humanity had completely bid farewell to the concept of going to work. Every day, upon waking up, there was no need to rush for a livelihood, only to think about what to play today. Entertainment had become the core of human life, and the holographic live streaming industry was unprecedentedly prosperous. Former soldiers, workers, programmers, and other wage slaves turned into streamers, actors, authors, and singers. Some streamed extreme sports with Viltrum people, while others shared artworks they created using free materials. Some opened virtual tourism channels, using VR technology to take viewers on a tour of the renovated global attractions. The virtual gaming world was bustling, with a holographic game that fused Earth and Viltrum civilizations. Within the first month of launch, it had over 6 billion players, with people creating characters in the game. They teamed up with players from all over the world for adventures, and could even compete on the same stage with Viltrum people. Global entertainment events were constant. The Global Singing Competition, held in Chicago, where the champion could win holographic creation equipment customized by Viltrum. At the Tokyo Virtual Film Festival, award-winning films were projected onto the city's skyscrapers for the whole city to watch. At the Rio de Janeiro Music Festival, the stage changed shape in real time using liquid particle technology, and the audience below partied to the rhythm all night long. People who used to be anxious about mortgages and car loans were now immersed in unconstrained entertainment. Some spent weeks in the virtual world, while others followed live streaming courses to learn musical instruments or painting. Others took their families to shuttle between free entertainment venues in various cities, enjoying unprecedented leisure. The Viltrum people also integrated into this life. Craig occasionally guest-starred in fighting-themed live streams. His witty and humorous style, combined with content full of practical knowledge, kept his live stream room at the top of the rankings year-round. Anissa became a regular in food live streaming. Her detailed teaching and outstanding culinary skills attracted over 1 billion fans for her. Initially, the reason Anissa embarked on the path of a chef was actually because of an idea Vilum gave her. To capture a man's heart, you must first capture his stomach. Unfortunately, even though Anissa had become one of the top 3 chefs in the world, she still hadn't managed to eat him. Mike, Jeff, and Billy were even more completely addicted. They formed a virtual gaming team and climbed the rankings with human teammates every day. Occasionally, because they lost a match, they would warmly greet their teammates on the mic, having completely lost the appearance of the cold-blooded executioners they once were. Earth no longer had the shadow of war or the pressure of survival, but it also gradually lost its fighting spirit. People sank into the gentle bubble of entertainment. No one cared anymore whether the Viltrum people's rule hid crises, and no one thought about the future of civilization. They only thought about the next live stream, the next game, or the next competition. On this day, Craig sent another invitation, inviting Vilum to attend his 23rd wedding. However, after arriving at the venue, Vilum couldn't help but be stunned. Because there were only about 30 Viltrum people present, including Nolan and his son, and no bride or other relatives and friends. His Majesty Velen, thank you for gracing us with your presence. Please take your seat. Dressed in a tuxedo, Craig smiled and walked up to him, his attitude very respectful. Upon hearing this, Vilum's expression changed, and he immediately took half a step back. What nonsense are you spouting? This is not something to joke about. Who am I, Vilum, to deserve such a great responsibility? As he spoke, Vilum turned to leave. But unexpectedly, just as he reached the door, several Viltrum people standing nearby surrounded him. Craig ripped off the curtain on the high platform, revealing a throne made of gold, with the emblem of the Viltrumite Empire on the backrest. Your Majesty, forgive us. Do it. At his order, the few Viltrum people at the door immediately surrounded him. Some grabbed his arms, some grabbed his legs, and they lifted Vilum up and rushed inside. What are you doing? This is rebellion, you are rebelling. 2 people walked out from behind the throne, holding a red velvet cloak with a thick white fur collar. As Vilum was pressed onto the throne, they fastened this cloak, which represented imperial power, onto him. The next second, everyone knelt on one knee, struck their chests with their right fists, and shouted in unison. Long live the Emperor! Long live! Long live! Oh my, you have truly put me in a tight spot. Regardless of what Vilum said, the crowd just shouted again. Long live the Emperor! Long live! Long live! You have truly put me in a tight spot, ha 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 ha. Sigh, things have reached this point, if I continue to decline, it would seem hypocritical. Very well, from today on, I will officially ascend the throne. Remember, the Viltrumite Empire is no longer synonymous with cold-bloodedness and slaughter. We will bring truth and justice to the world and create a better tomorrow together. Hearing this, everyone showed joy, and at the same time raised their right hands, giving a thumbs up. We pledge our lives to Emperor Vilum. Viltrum Mother Planet, Council Chamber. Trigon slammed the skull of the former emperor in his hand against the armrest of the obsidian throne. The collision between the skull and the metal produced a harsh, crisp sound, and the crack at the chipped edge widened slightly. Rebellion, it's rebellion. This bunch of spineless traitors. A low, furious roar echoed through the vast hall, shaking dust from the ceiling that fell in a flurry. Trigon's rage caused the entire hall to tremble. The purple-skinned attendants inside the hall shivered in fear, kneeling to the ground one after another, not daring to look up. From the communicator, Lucan's voice came through with a hint of hesitation, yet was exceptionally clear. Your Highness Regent, the news has been confirmed. Craig, Anissa, and 32 other Viltrumite warriors have crowned Viltrum Grayson as the new emperor. They have also abolished the Empire's iron-blooded code and are pushing what they call a peaceful propagation policy. A flash of scarlet killing intent flickered in Trigon's single eye as his fingers gripped the throne's armrest tightly, leaving a clear palm print on it. A bunch of trash corrupted by the comfort of Earth. He stood up abruptly, his booming voice echoing throughout the entire hall. Prepare the ship. I am going to Earth personally to see what kind of tricks that Greenhorn is pulling. I want to see just how far the empire I carefully guarded has fallen. Lucan hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Your Highness, Vilum's strength is unfathomable. Anissa says he has mastered various special abilities, and even 4 or 5 of them working together are no match for him. We only have 15 pure-blooded warriors left now, going rashly, I fear. Silence. Trigon interrupted him sharply, his face gloomy as he walked forward on his own. The continuation of the Viltrum people is not about this kind of lingering on in a desperate state. I want to see if his so-called peaceful rule can withstand my fists. 3 days later, a small Imperial warship broke through the gravitational circle of the solar system and sped towards Earth. On the bridge, Trigon stood before the porthole, his gaze locked onto that blue planet. Viewed from space, the Earth's surface did not have the vast, continuous metal building complexes like the mother planet. Instead, it was replaced by vast stretches of green vegetation and flickering city lights. One could even see holographic advertisements floating outside the atmosphere, playing scenes of humans and Viltrum people playing together. So degenerate, these people are truly finished. Trigon snorted coldly, his eyes filled with disdain. A planet completely corrupted by entertainment and comfort, it is truly laughable that Viltrum would treat this place as the new core of the Empire. The warship slowly landed on a dedicated landing pad in the suburbs of Chicago, a place that was once a fortification of the Global Defense Bureau. Now it had been converted into the Royal Spaceport of the Viltrumite Empire. As Trigon stepped off the warship, the first thing that met his eyes was a lush, green lawn dotted with colorful flowers. Several Viltrum children were chasing and playing with Earth children, while their parents sat on nearby benches, chatting and laughing, holding Earth beverages and snacks in their hands. This scene made Trigon's brow furrow even tighter. On the Viltrum mother planet, children had to undergo militarized training from around the age of 5. Bleeding and getting injured were a daily occurrence. How could there be such a carefree scene? Your Highness Regent, His Majesty is waiting at the Imperial Palace. A Viltrum warrior dressed in a silver-gray combat suit stepped forward, his tone still respectful, yet lacking the reverence of the past. Trigon recognized him as a soldier under Craig's command, once one of the most ferocious warriors in the training grounds of the mother planet. Imperial Palace. What kind of place is he treating as an Imperial Palace? Trigon raised an eyebrow, suppressing the urge to blow up the planet, and followed the welcoming envoy toward the Imperial Palace. The scenes along the way were even harder for him to understand. The former military base had been converted into a large amusement park, with roller coasters whizzing by, filled with screaming humans and Viltrum children. In the free supply stations along the road, robots were distributing blue corn and various daily necessities to the people, and everyone's face wore a satisfied smile. Not far away, there even stood a huge billboard, and on it was none other than Anissa, wearing an apron and holding a pot in her hand. Is this the life you wanted? Trigon stopped in his tracks, looking at the warrior, his tone icy. Forgetting the mission of the Viltrum people to conquer the universe, forgetting that we are the most powerful race in the universe. Spending all day mingling with these weak earthlings, eating cheap food, and playing boring games. The smile on the warrior's face faded, and his tone also became cold. Your Highness Regent, the mission of the Viltrum people has never been meaningless slaughter. His Majesty has made us understand that true strength is not about how many planets one conquers, but about letting one's own people live happily. Here, we don't have to worry about the dangers of inbreeding, and we don't have to face endless wars. We have families, friends, and lives of our own. This is what the Empire should look like. Trigon was choked speechless, the rage in his heart growing even stronger. He stopped speaking and quickened his pace, heading toward the so-called Imperial Palace. The so-called Imperial Palace was not the metal fortress Trigon had imagined, but a renovated skyscraper. The top of the building had been converted into an open-air platform, covered with soft turf and furnished with comfortable seats, with the Chicago skyline in the distance and pleasant scenery. Viltrum was sitting on a golden throne in the center of the platform, wearing a red velvet cloak embroidered with the Imperial emblem, with Anissa standing by his side as his assistant. Seeing Trigon approach, Viltrum slowly stood up, a faint smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Regent Trigon, welcome to Earth. You've had a long journey. Trigon did not respond to his greeting, his gaze sweeping over the surrounding environment before finally landing on Viltrum, his tone filled with heavy mockery. This is your Imperial Palace. No trophies symbolizing glory, only these flashy, impractical decorations. Viltrum, have you forgotten that you are a Viltrum person? I haven't forgotten. Viltrum walked up to him, his tone calm. But I remember that the glory of the Viltrum people is to ensure the survival of the race and the happiness of our people. Not to let them live precarious lives in cold, metal buildings. He waved his hand, and a holographic screen behind him lit up, displaying the results of his rule on Earth. In a year and a half, our population has increased from 26 to about 150. Earthlings are voluntarily procreating with us because we have given them a better life. Free food, free medical care, unlimited energy. They no longer resist because they know that following us allows them to live better. The screen switched, displaying the current state of the mother planet. And what about the mother planet? For 200 years, the number of pure-blooded warriors has plummeted from millions to 50. The rate of premature death caused by inbreeding is getting higher and higher, and the planets we rule are restless. Trigon, your iron-fisted rule has not made the Empire strong, instead, it is leading it to destruction. Nonsense. Trigon roared angrily, his fists clenching tightly. The strength of the Viltrum people comes from war and conquest. Only by making all races fear us can the Empire be prosperous. Your weak way of ruling will sooner or later cause the Earthlings to backlash, plunging the Viltrum people into crisis once again. You have been corrupted too. Trigon looked at Anissa on the side, his eyes full of disappointment. Once, you were one of the most ferocious warriors in the Empire. And now, what has become of you? Hearing this, Anissa responded calmly. Your Highness Regent, His Majesty Viltrum's rule is not weakness, but wisdom. He has achieved the greatest benefits with the minimum cost. Earth's resources and population are all serving the Empire, and we don't need to sacrifice much. This is far more efficient than your iron-fisted conquest. Trigon's gaze swept over the Viltrum people present. Everyone's face wore a determined expression, without the slightest wavering. He suddenly realized that he had completely lost the support of these warriors. They were not being oppressed by Viltrum, they genuinely identified with his way of ruling. Good, a very wise rule, indeed. Trigon sneered, his arms, which were broader than Viltrum's shoulders, tensed suddenly, the terrifying power vibrating the surrounding air until it cracked. I want to see if your wisdom can withstand my fists. Viltrum, do you dare to fight me? If you win, I will acknowledge your throne. If you lose, you will get back to the mother planet, and I, the more qualified one, will rule the Empire. The smile on Viltrum's face faded, his tone calm yet carrying undeniable majesty. Trigon, do you really want to force my hand? Force your hand. Trigon charged at Viltrum violently, his right fist gathering the power to tear apart a planet, striking directly at his face. I want to let you know that the glory of the Viltrum people has never relied on comfort and compromise. A gust of air exploded, and a visible, massive shockwave spread out. The Regent and the new Emperor, these two powerhouses who could rank in the top 5 of this universe, finally broke out into a great battle. Team Leader, Director of the Defense Bureau, Earth's Martial God, Emperor of the Viltrumite Empire. These are the statuses and reputations I, a Viltrumite Prince, have once held. Positions and official titles, each stronger and higher than the last. My name is Viltrum. The strongest person in the world. Since my rebirth, my power and cultivation have been constantly growing. Such is the strength of my divine arts that only an ancestor from 5,000 years ago could even be mentioned in the same breath as me. Mentioned in the same breath. HMPH, perhaps my current strength has already far surpassed that ancestor. And to ensure I forever possess invincible power, I will do whatever is necessary, by any means. Besides dealing with all those who do not submit to me, they must also offer up anything that can help me. If anyone refuses, even if they are my friend, I will not spare them. Because this is my Tao, my path. Perhaps some do not acknowledge me. But when the vast majority of the world trusts me and considers me the most noble hero, the greatest martial god, how could I be wrong? No. Even if it means killing multiple Earth heroes and stealing their abilities. As long as the foolish remain ignorant, and others dare not rebel and fear me, how could I be wrong? Even if I am wrong, in the end, it will only be the world's fault, the fool's fault, the weakling's fault. Because without my wisdom and great power, they would still be living in the painful world of the wars of the past. Therefore, everyone, those who do not want to die or suffer must love me, be loyal to me, respect me, and worship me. Admire me, this team leader, swear to die for me, the Director of the Defense Bureau, Earth's Martial God, the Emperor of the Viltrumite Empire. Me. I, Emperor Viltrum, Regent of the Viltrumite Empire, King of Conquest, Strongest Warrior, Vanguard Explorer. These are the statuses and positions I, Trigon, have once held. Destinies and positions I cherished, that I would never let go of. Others call me, Regent. A man plagued by duty and troubles his whole life. Doing things I dislike to ensure the Empire rules the entire universe. Letting a prince go when I shouldn't have, and trusting a Craig I shouldn't have, leading to the corruption of the Empire's last spark. The word, failure, seems tied to my destiny. Even with Conquest's support and my subordinates' advice, I still missed the chance to kill Viltrum. Causing my elite subordinates to fall and betray me, leaving me in a situation where I am practically a commander with no troops. Finally stepping onto this planet that leads the Empire's warriors to corruption and weakness. The Council of Advisors says that my confrontation with Viltrum is necessary providence, a destiny that cannot be avoided. But I refuse to believe in fate. Even if some prophecies come true, I still convince myself that they are just coincidences. Things that can be figured out with wisdom and patience. I will not do the opposite just because of bloodline. Whatever providence, bloodline, or destiny may be, I, Trigon, will only do what my reason tells me is the most correct thing to do. If I must lead, I will lead. If I must lie, I will lie. If my life does not permit Viltrum's existence, I will absolutely kill him. No matter what others say, regardless of whether I can preserve my true self in the future, I, Trigon, will do what is right. Fight the right battle against Viltrum. Fight for the revival of the Empire. Fight for the ideals and glory of the Viltrumite Empire. Fight for my hundreds of years of sacrifice. Fight for the people of the Empire, regardless of whether they understand or not. Fight, fight, fight. Today, the Regent will fight his final battle. Upon first contact, both men erupted with full power. The shockwave from their colliding fists not only instantly shattered Viltrum's throne and the rooftop. Even Anissa and the Viltrumite who brought Trigon here were blown away more than 100 meters. Viltrum didn't want his amusement park ruined, so he deliberately didn't use intangibility, taking Trigon's attack head-on. He seized the opportunity to land a heavy uppercut to his opponent's abdomen, sending him flying into the sky. He decided to move the battlefield to space or another planet, so the damage to Earth would be much less. It didn't matter before, but now Earth is his private property. He couldn't let this old geezer Trigon destroy it. You are no match for me at all, why bother coming here to die? You wet behind the ears brat, you're still too inexperienced. Trigon, in the space outside Earth, halted his backward flight and punched toward Viltrum's head. However, this time it was far beyond his expectations. His swing, aimed at the temple, had missed. Viltrum's body phased, perfectly dodging the blow while simultaneously landing a backhand jab on Trigon's nose. When he counterattacked, Viltrum phased again. Now possessing Red Speed's reaction time, Viltrum's movements looked like a slow-motion PPT to him. Even if Trigon's strength was great, he could do nothing to him. I can hit you, but you can't hit me. Do you like my infinite intangibility? After consuming more than 50 exchanges like this, Trigon was already covered in blood. However, his base stats were truly exaggerated. Not only was his strength immense, his arms, thicker than Viltrum's waist, had astonishing defensive power. With a thunderous boom, Trigon was grabbed by the ankle by Viltrum and thrown onto the surface of Mars. Meanwhile, at a command post of the Planetary Alliance, Thaddeus was watching the surveillance footage with a solemn expression. Because most Viltrumites had left the planets they ruled and headed to Earth, the Planetary Alliance had begun monitoring Earth 6 months ago. Now, seeing the two rulers of the Viltrumite Empire, Trigon and Viltrum, erupt into a great battle, they naturally wanted to see who would be the final victor. Furthermore, Thaddeus decided to drop the semi-finished Scourge virus when they were both weakened, to kill them both completely. In this way, even if they couldn't completely defeat the Viltrumites, they could leave them without a leader. There was even a high probability that it would cause them to erupt into civil war again, in which case this race would be not far from extinction. However, the ideal was plump, but reality slapped everyone in the face hard. Trigon had absolutely no power to fight back, he was purely being kicked around like a ball by Viltrum. Not only that, what even Trigon hadn't expected was that Viltrum could actually use a powerful sonic attack that caused him extreme pain. A roar at close range, the sound waves forming a visible conical shockwave that enveloped Trigon. He instantly felt like his ears were exploding, his whole head buzzing. Dizziness, weakness in his limbs, and double vision. Viltrum did not stop. After hard crowd controlling Trigon, he grabbed his head. Carrying this big guy, who was twice as bulky as him, he flew into the air at an incredible, super high speed. When they dove down again, they emitted shrieks and fire like an asteroid. Upon landing, they directly smashed a giant crater on Mars with a diameter of over 550 kilometers and a depth of over 30 kilometers. Waves of soil and gravel were stirred up tens of thousands of meters, visible even from outside the planet's orbit. However, the next second, the spaceship responsible for observing the battle was swept by the terrifying shockwave. Not only did all the instruments fail, but the ship itself tumbled and flew off, crashing toward the planet behind it. This still didn't defeat Trigon. He was still attacking Viltrum with all his might, but unfortunately, all of them were dodged by intangibility. And these dodged attacks almost all landed on the surface of Mars. The ground was torn apart, mountains shattered into flying rocks. The entire planet was devastated, as if it were being crazily insulted and ravaged by the two. Why can't I hit you? Finally, after being thrown out again and smashing through a mountain, Trigon barely managed to prop himself up. Panting heavily, he voiced the confusion that had plagued him for so long. Viltrum didn't rush to continue attacking, but stood with arms crossed, looking down at Trigon. Perfect intangibility, kid. Now, it's time to go, Your Highness Trigon. That's the end of part 2. Part 3 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support our channel for more stories.